Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
The two werewolves were staring at each other before they both slowly started to move up and down, seemingly waiting for the other to make the first move. As the group of teenagers looked at the two mythological creatures, they started to notice some small differences between the two. The most obvious one was their difference in stature. The one that had just arrived was about one head shorter than the first werewolf, and while it was also muscular, it seemed to be more lean compared to the other being more buff. The color of their fur was also different, the bigger one clearly more black while the newer one was more brownish. "Oh God, it's another one of those monsters," Inu shouted as he looked around at what had saved him from certain death. He was grabbing his chest as his already fast heartbeat became even faster, making him start to worry about suffering a heart attack. The larger of the two creatures turned to look at Inu, yet the smaller one used that opportunity to leap in, almost tackling the larger one by the waist. It pushed it a small distance away, until the larger werewolf dug its claws into the side of the other's ribs. The small werewolf screamed out in pain and let go, though the wounds on its side started healing at a visible speed. Alas, before the smaller one could fully recover, the larger dug its claws into the smaller one's chest and slightly lifted him up before he began running until it had banged the other's body into a tree. The brown werewolf screamed out once more in pain and snarled at the larger one, clearly struggling. Desperate, it used the tree to kick off with its powerful back legs, kicking the larger one's chest, making him let go. These two really don't seem like normal altered. Kai spoke his mind. They seem more like two wild beasts who have met each other and are fighting over their territory. Who the F***CK cares what they are? This is our chance to get out of here. If we stay here, we'll just end up as the winner's meal. So let's go, Marie stated before she turned around and started to head away from the fight. Inu followed right behind her. The high schooler had come too close to death already, and he didn't feel lucky enough to survive a third near-death experience this evening. Exion hesitated, but just when she was about to run off, she noticed that the one person who had been dragging them behind a lot lately was still staring at the fight. "Tom, come on, we gotta get out of here. What are you waiting for?" Exion called out, grabbing his hand. Meanwhile, Kai had continued paying attention to the fight between the two, making up his mind whether the better choice was to run for it or help the smaller one. Unfortunately, the werewolf whose identity he presumed to know was not only larger, but had also proven to be faster and stronger. The smaller werewolf was getting hurt far more often than his opponent, although all their wounds were healing. With each hit, one of the two parties was proving their dominance in this fight. Just then, the larger werewolf had picked up the other by its legs and swung it into a tree, destroying it and greatly hurting the smaller werewolf. Hearing the cries of the werewolf was hurting Tom internally. "I'm sure of it, that smaller werewolf. The reason why it didn't attack us and went straight for the others. It's you, right, Gary?" Tom thought. "You heard my cry and came to save us, and now you're losing out to the other Omega. This must be the one who you were talking about. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for thinking that that was you, that you might have attacked us before." At that moment, Tom felt Exion grab him. "Look, we might not be friends, but there's no way I'm leaving my classmate here to die." Exion insisted, starting to drag Tom behind, yet she felt him resist as he pulled back. "We can't go now. That smaller werewolf saved us. We have to help him. Please, if we don't do anything, he might kill him," Tom begged. Seeing the look on the other teenagers' faces, he could tell that all of them thought he was mad for planning to help a monster. Even Inu, who had been saved by the smaller one's action, only thought that it had been a coincidence. Still, though, Kai had noticed Tom's strange actions. He keeps calling them werewolves instead of altered, as if he's certain that that's what they are. He also thought the big werewolf to be Gary before. However, if my guess is right, that larger one should be, and now he wants us to save him. Could it be that he mistook their identities? Of course, there was no way for Kai to confirm his thoughts, and as much as this situation fascinated him, he treasured his life far more than to satisfy his curiosity. Marie stopped waiting around and broke out into actual running, Kai soon following, along with Inu, and that's when Xian started to drag Tom along with them, who couldn't help but continue to look back. "I'm sorry," Tom shouted. The group had run forward for a little while further into the trees, yet they could still hear the sounds of fighting going on behind them. It was then, though, that they could hear panting and the sound of growling getting louder. "Don't turn back! Don't turn back!" Inu conditioned himself. "It's chasing after us," Xian shouted, forced to look back because she kept dragging Tom along, and she could see that the larger werewolf was the one behind them. "No, it's the other werewolf. Does that mean Gary lost?" Tom worried about his best friend. When the werewolf was close enough, it leapt towards the group, and its claws were reaching out towards Tom. It looked like it was about to reach him, but a few inches away from the high schooler's face, he came to an abrupt stop. Opening one eye as he noticed that the pain he had expected never came, Tom saw that Gary had returned, just in time to save him from the other werewolf. His best friend was covered in wounds which did not seem to be healing, yet he was still putting up a fight. Seeing that the larger werewolf was about to attack, Tom decided to pick up a rock and went ahead to throw it at the werewolf. However, before he could throw it, someone held him by the wrist. "Don't stop me, Xian. If you don't want to help him, that's fine, but I have to help him get rid of that other werewolf," Tom shouted. "Don't worry, you can leave that to us," an unrecognizable voice said. Surprised, Tom looked around to see that instead of the new girl, it was actually a large man holding his wrist. He was covered in a trench coat, and not too far away from him was another person in similar getup. The pair of them wore black masks covering their faces, hiding their identity. Pulling off the trench coat, the man revealed a strange, jagged black armor. It looked like the type one would find in a museum, showing off how their ancestors had once fought. Yet this one, despite the medieval look, had several weapons strapped on. The most noteworthy one was a strange sword that appeared to have been elaborately crafted. As such, the next action confused Tom, as the man took out what looked to be a baton. He pushed a button, and the weapon began to emit electricity. "Are you altar hunters?" Tom asked, unsure whether this was a good thing or a bad thing for his friend. The two strange people who Tom suspected to be altered hunters charged forward without hesitation. The others couldn't believe that there were people like this that actually existed. The two strange people who Tom suspected to be altered hunters charged forward without hesitation. The others couldn't believe that there were people like this that actually existed. They had all heard about the altar hunters' existence through the news every now and then, but the stories about them didn't really seem realistic. As an organization that seemed to be against the very existence of altered, how were they able to match those superhuman people? Right now, they were able to witness it for themselves. At least they would have been able to if it had been safe for them to stay. Altered hunters were considered to be dangerous criminals on the same level as gangs, if not worse, which was why most of the group was still inclined to get out of there as soon as possible. "We won't get a better chance than this. Let's go." Marie hurried them along, already running ahead, with Kai following closely behind her. "Tom!" Xian shouted one more time at her classmate. He looked at her, and for a brief moment, it appeared as if he was going to follow her, only for him to turn around and continue watching the fight. In his mind, Gary wasn't safe. In fact, his situation might have just gotten worse. Having had enough of the other's nonsense, Xian lifted her leg up and swung it out, delivering a roundhouse kick right to Tom's head. His body fell to the ground, knocking him out cold. "What did you do that for?" Inu shouted in confusion, not having expected the girl to be this ruthless. Xian went to pick Tom off the ground and dragged him over to Inu. "I don't know what's wrong with him. First he calls one of those beasts Gary, then he wants us to help one of those beasts, and now it seemed like he wanted to stay behind. He can hate me later if he wants to. Right now the important thing is to get his safety. Anyway, you said you were strong, right? Help me carry him. He isn't that heavy." Inu wanted to decline, especially since there were literally monsters chasing them, but in the end, he felt like he couldn't say no to Xian. Fortunately, from the looks of things, the altar hunters seemed to be doing a good job facing the werewolves. As Tom was placed on Inu's back, a loud growl could be heard from behind, and to their surprise, both of the werewolves seemed to be ignoring each other, as well as the altered hunters, and were now staring at Inu. "Why me again?" The high schooler cried out in despair as he ran as fast as he could with his classmate on his back. The werewolves leapt in the air, yet the altered hunters were ready for them. "I'll take on the bigger one. You can handle the small one, right?" The larger hunter asked his companion, who nodded. The two of them intercepted the beast without any signs of fear, using their specially made batons. Each one hit the underside of the werewolves, electrifying them on the spot, causing them both to plummet down. As soon as they landed, they both went to swipe at their respective attacker. Yet the altered hunters proved to be skilled enough to avoid the fast claws. Slowly, as they continued to avoid the hits, the two werewolves and altered hunters were getting further and further apart from each other, though by this time the teenagers had managed to run quite a distance away. The large hunter was only slightly shorter than the black creature that he was facing. With the armor and weapons on him, it looked as if he would be able to put up a good fight. "Are you sure you want to stay in your full form? You're just making it easier for me to fight you this way." The hunter taunted the beast. The next second, the werewolf got on all fours and leapt towards the hunter. With his electrified baton, he hit the side of the werewolf's ribs, yet the others seemed to have expected it. Its sheer size, weight, and momentum allowed the large creature to push through despite the damage it sustained. The black-furred werewolf opened its large mouth wide and clamped down on the hunter, who shoved his forearm into the beast's mouth. When the werewolf closed its powerful jaws, it was stupefied, surprised that its teeth were unable to break through whatever armor they were wearing. "This is no ordinary armor," the man shouted, and realizing that the baton did little against his foe, he placed it away, pulling out the sword by his side. He swung it fast, and the werewolf was barely able to get away, but not before the weapon lightly scratched the outside of his chest. Blood had been drawn, and the creature could smell burnt flesh. Looking at the sword, he realized that it was far from being ordinary. The edge lit up in a scorching red. "I saw flesh between your teeth, and you have the stench of blood on you," the hunter said. "You altered make me sick." Not too far away from where they were, the smaller hunter was facing off against the brown werewolf. Not only was it smaller than its fellow beast, but it seemed slower and less powerful, which was why he had been tasked with facing this one. Nevertheless, his training had taught him never to underestimate his enemy. One moment of carelessness could spell his demise. The small hunter pulled out a second electrified baton and held them in both hands. He looked at the werewolf and was carefully watching him. It had gotten on all fours and pushed off its powerful legs, taking a swipe at the young hunter. He leaned back and narrowly avoided the blow, being faster than what he had imagined, making him nearly lose his balance. Still, he caught himself with his arms, arching his back, and went to kick the beast who had now jumped over him. Seconds before his foot made contact with the beast, a small blade could be seen sticking out from the top of his toes, which had pierced the brown werewolf straight in the stomach. The creature howled in pain, and when it landed, it rolled about on the ground. Blood was dripping from the werewolf. Unlike the other one, this one's wounds seemed to be healing at a far slower rate. It was then, when the hunter saw the back of the werewolf, he could see that a tint of its hair on its head was slightly green. He was unsure how he had missed such a striking detail. "Remind me of someone," the hunter thought, but as soon as the werewolf turned around and showed its giant teeth, he knew there was no time to think about unnecessary things. The group had finally made it out of the forest and onto the main street. They all wanted to collapse right then and there, exhausted as the adrenaline that had helped them get this far had nearly been exhausted. "We're finally safe." Marie fell to her knees on the pavement, yet two shadows soon cast over her. "We received a report that an altered had appeared in Seepin Park. Are you the ones who made the report?" When Marie looked up, she could see two figures displaying their golden badges with the symbol of a white rose. As expected, after the altered hunter had brought out his sword with the heated edge, the larger werewolf became far more cautious. It leapt up onto one of the large trees and climbed it midway, continuously growling at the hunter as if trying to intimidate him. However, what it was really trying to do was wait for its wound to heal. It seemed to take longer than other injuries. Even when the werewolf stopped bleeding, there was still a burn mark that remained on its chest. This altered's healing speed is faster than anything I have encountered before. The altered hunter noticed. Its fighting style resembles that of a wild beast, making him very unpredictable. Still, it's far weaker and has less tricks up its sleeve than other altered I had to face. From the belt around his waist that was filled with items, the altered hunter pulled out a small dagger, throwing it out at the werewolf. The creature quickly dodged the attack, jumping to another tree, digging its claws in to keep it from falling. The altered hunter then pulled on something, and the small weapon returned from the tree. A green liquid could be seen on its tip. Should have known this altered is incredibly agile as well. It seems to be learning as it fights. I only have 3 more poison daggers. If I can just hit it cleanly once, I should be able to bring it in without getting hurt. It might be able to tell us if it has any comrades. The second the altered hunter thought this, he could see the werewolf doing something strange. It started to jump from tree to tree. Although the movements weren't too fast, with the moon being the only source of light, the beast's dark fur made it hard for the altered hunter's eyes to keep track of it. The forest proved to give the werewolf a serious advantage in this fight, giving it plenty of trees to use. Springing from one tree to the other, the altered hunter eventually lost track of it, unsure where it would attack from next, leaving him with only thing to do. Wait. The altered hunter held onto its sword tightly, and before he knew it, it had pounced on him just like before. He swung his sword, aiming to inflict the beast with a devastating blow, but instead of flesh, he felt like he had hit solid metal. The altered hunter's arms were shaking from the great impact. When looking up, he saw that his sword connected with the werewolf's claws, yet they had extended to the point that they were as long as its hands. Just what are those nails made of? Similar to the baton, the altered hunter's current weapon had a button that would make it sear. However, as if the werewolf had predicted this move, it had suddenly pulled back one hand to take a large swipe, hitting the altered hunter in the chest and sending him flying a few meters through the air. He remained uninjured thanks to his strong armor, but he had to acknowledge that this fight was going to be way harder than he had initially anticipated. If I had known it would be this tough, I would have notified the others, or at least brought a better weapon along. Who would have thought that the altered and slew would be so abnormal? Unfortunately, it was too late for regrets. The first thing the altered hunter had done upon landing was to roll to the side, ready for the creature to follow up his attack. But when he looked up, he saw that the beast's attention was no longer on his. Its head was looking slightly upward, and it clenched its large teeth. A few seconds later, the werewolf could be seen jumping from tree to tree, going higher and higher until it reached the very top of the largest tree in the area. It jumped off, leaping through the air, shining its claws at what was above them. Yet it completely missed the mark as its intended targets flew to the side, making him fall down. Up in the sky were 2 people, a man and a woman, each one flapping large feathered wings on their back to stay airborne. "Oh great, it's them," the altered hunter mumbled under his breath. "It looks like someone managed to arrive before us." Frank spoke to his colleague. "Indeed, but I'm more interested in the altered. It doesn't look like your usual type. Very aggressive, though apparently lacking in the brains department. We need to bring it in for questioning. I have a feeling that it's linked with the recent killings, including those at the construction site." Sadie replied. The 2 of them dove down at great speed, and when landing between the 2 parties, the leaves were chucked up in the air around them. Frank was facing towards the altered hunter, whereas Sadie was in front of the werewolf now. "You are always interested in the more dangerous-looking ones," Frank commented. "White Rose, why do you always have to get in our way?" The altered hunter asked in a bitter tone. "Because not all altered are bad, yet you altered hunters seem to ignore that fact," Frank answered. "This time you might have had a valid reason, but we know that's not always the case. I'm afraid we will be bringing you in as well. It's a shame. You would make great members of White Rose, if only you could go of your stupid dogma." The White Rose agent flapped his wings once more and dashed towards the altered hunter, who swung his sword. Frank tilted his body to the side so it would hit his powerful wings instead. Then with another flap, he pushed the altered hunter to the ground. The force of the attack was enough to break a normal person's arm, yet the altered hunters weren't regular people. The White Rose agent threw out his fist. One could see that his arm had transformed into a strange talon midway grabbing the sword. Frank started to flap his wings, gripping the sword tightly. No matter how hard the altered hunter pulled, he was unable to get his weapon free and soon found himself in the air. However, this wasn't the first time the altered hunter had a fight against White Rose. He had many more tricks up its sleeve and pulled one of the daggers that was coated in a green liquid. Meanwhile, the female White Rose agent was in the middle of battle with the suspected altered killer, and she was having an easier time than she imagined. From her wings, she had pulled out several of her feathers and threw them at the werewolf. Idiotically, the werewolf didn't try to avoid them and just ran straight towards Sadie. When the feathers hit, the creature soon discovered that they were far more dangerous than he had believed. The feathers were as hard as iron arrows, piercing into the werewolf's body, pushing it back slightly. The werewolf quickly pulled them out of its body, allowing them to heal, and, out of frustration, tried to throw the feather back towards Sadie, but they had flipped to the ground just like a normal feather. This seems like it will be a very easy job. Sadie sneered. When Tom opened his eyes, he found himself looking at a bright white light. What happened? Where are we? Tom asked, looking around to see Kai. Where is Gary? Who knows? Inu shrugged his shoulders. We followed you hoping to find him, but instead, we nearly lost our lives. Do you have any idea how often I nearly died today? On further inspection, Tom realized that he and his schoolmates were in what looked like a police station. He could see several criminals coming in and out, and people in uniform busy with work despite the late hour. Sitting next to him was Inu, Marie, and Exian. Inu looked quite pissed as he recalled his experience, but he seemed to know that blaming Tom wouldn't do anything. Marie was still recovering from her shock, and someone seemed to have given her some hot chocolate to calm her nerves. Exian seemed nervous as she looked down and fiddled with her hands, making sure not to make eye contact with anyone. A little while later, Kai came out from one of the offices. Good news, everyone. We're free to go home, and the police are even nice enough to give us a lift since it's so late. Probably also to avoid us meeting with whatever was in the park. Wait, so we don't all have to give reports on what happened? Exian asked, looking relieved. I said I would handle it, didn't I? Unless you feel it's your civil duty to tell them another version of the same thing I just did, let's get going. I don't know about you, but I could use some rest. If we wake up and still remember what happened today, then we will know it wasn't a crazy dream. Kai answered. The others were thankful they could finally go home. Tom was still worried, but he knew it would be suicide to enter the forest on his own. He didn't even know if Gary and the other Omega Wolf would still be out there. Gary, please be safe. By the way, why was I asleep? Tom asked. And why does my head hurt? The others just looked at Exian with a grin on their faces, letting her be the one to explain it. In the forest, a distance away from the four adults, another fight was taking place. The young altered hunter had no idea what was going on his partner's side, yet he lacked the time to worry about him, for he needed to concentrate on the opponent in front of him. Once again, the brown werewolf swiped at the young altered hunter's head. He rolled to the side, causing the blow to miss and hit the tree instead. Large, deep claw marks were left behind, shredding a huge chunk of the tree. It has great strength. If that thing hits me in the head, I'm done for. Still, the young altered hunter remained level-headed. At every opportunity that presented itself, he would hit the werewolf with his electrified batons, stunning it for a while as the electric power went to work. Just how many hits can this altar take? That much electricity should have been enough to even knock an elephant out by now. Does it have some special kind of resistance, or is it just healing this fast? The young altered hunter wondered. Whatever the case, I can tell that its movements are slowing down with each hit. If I keep hitting it with the electric batons, then I can change to the sword and finish it off. You will become my first ever altered kill, allowing me to get on my way to my first star. Nearly all of the werewolf strikes were missing the altered hunter by the skin of his teeth, yet once in a while he managed to get one in. Unfortunately for the creature, his attacks weren't strong enough to pierce through the special altered hunter armor. Nevertheless, each hit served as a grim reminder of the powerful strength of his foe. The altered hunter had no clue how long they had been fighting for. It felt like a long time, and that was when he started to notice something. It is getting smaller, the altered hunter realized. Dodging another hit, he used both electrified batons at the same time to shock its back. The beast let out another scream. Only this time, rather than a beast's growl, what came out resembled a normal human voice in agony. I'm right. As the altered's getting weaker, it must be reverting back. Seeing how the werewolf was slowing down and reverting even, the altered hunter believed this to be his chance. He was also worried that his partner had yet to appear. Either he was having a much harder time or something unexpected had happened. The movements of the brown werewolf were sluggish and slow by now, making it easier for the altered hunter to avoid its swing. Using both of the batons, he consecutively started to hit the beast on its arms, on its chest, and legs all over. In front of the altered hunter's very eyes, the werewolf began to shrink to the point that the two of them were on the same eye level. The patch of green fur from the top of its head had also started to spread out until, finally, one could see human skin underneath. I thought this might have been a real monster for a second, but now I know that there really is a human underneath this abomination. I can do this. The altered hunter steeled his resolve, charging in and swinging out its baton towards the werewolf's face. One baton hit its large snout, and its face flung to the side. The large teeth started to revert, and the same happened to the snout. The altered hunter didn't stop there. His other baton hit it from the other side as well, making the snout shrink even more. Third time's the charm. The altered hunter thought, swinging both batons towards the head again, landing a successful hit against his target. He was starting to see a human face underneath it all, but at that moment, the werewolf let out a final desperate attack, his claw slicing the mask off of the altered hunter. With that, the creature fell to the ground, completely exhausted, fully reverting to its human form. *T, he broke my mask. Well, it won't matter. He's going to die anyway, so who cares if he sees my face now? The altered hunter tried to calm himself down, making a mental note to bring a replacement mask on his next hunt. It had been a tough fight, and in a way the young, altered hunter had been lucky that his target had already been injured and hurt from fighting the other werewolf before. If that wasn't the case, the altered hunter wasn't sure if the outcome of their duel would have been the same. Placing the batons away, he pulled out a short sword holding it in one hand. He carefully used the weapon to turn the human body over, wishing to imprint the face of his first kill into his mind. Gary. The young altered hunter almost fell over backwards as he recognized the werewolf's face. The beast had reverted into human form, revealing a teenage boy's naked body filled with visible scratch and claw marks, injuries sustained from his against the other werewolf. What do I do now? The young altered hunter was in a panic. He had never expected to actually know the altered he had been ready to kill. Just to check whether his mind was playing tricks on him, making him mistake the other's identity just because of the green hair, he wanted to turn over his body one more time. Due to the darkness, the altered hunter got closer to get a better view of the other's face. However, just then the boy on the ground abruptly opened his eyes, his vision hazy and his body in pain. Everything felt weak and tired, but he suddenly found a familiar face in front of him. "B. Blake," Gary blurted out, still finding it hard to move. Touching his face, the altered hunter remembered that the other had destroyed his mask, the one item that was supposed to hide his identity. He saw who I am. He knows I'm an altered hunter. I can't let him go now. He's an altered in the first place, so I just need to get rid of him. Blake looked down to the short sword in his hand, yet he couldn't find the strength to grip his hand around it. He had been ready to kill the altered, but now he hesitated. It didn't help that Gary was no longer attacking him, looking defenseless and confused. I can't. He's my classmate. I have no idea how he became such an abomination, but I know that he helped me. He even took a hit from me from those Eaton High thugs. My head hurts like hell, Gary said groggily as he lifted up his body. Feeling a little chilly, Gary soon noticed that he had no clothes on whatsoever, and he was slowly starting to realize that he was in the middle of an unfamiliar forest as well. Why am I here? What the hell happened? And why am I naked? Gary bombarded the hesitating Blake with a barrage of questions as he picked up the largest leaf he could see to hide his nether regions. Huh? You mean you don't remember? You don't remember how you got here, or what just happened? Blake almost shouted, swinging his short sword about. Looking at the illegal weapon in his hand, Gary finally noticed the strange clothing his classmate wore, as well as the batons on his waist. He looks pretty much like a younger version of that other guy. Wait, no. How can that be? It was then that Gary was starting to put the pieces together. The last thing he remembered before he woke up was the system notifying him about his transformation starting and then experiencing a type of torture that he never wanted to relive again. He could guess that his werewolf self had headed for the woods. Wait, Blake, I don't care who you are. What about Tom? Is he okay? Did I hurt him? Did I hurt anybody else? Gary asked, grabbing the other by the shoulder, letting the leaf fall down. Blake could tell that the other was genuinely concerned, but he didn't understand what was happening to Gary. As an altered, the other should have been in full control of his actions, even if this might have been his first full-body transformation. It didn't make sense for him not to remember anything. That's right, Tom was with those other guys. I have no clue where he is now, but I still need to decide what I need to do. Gary knows who I am and what I am, but he doesn't seem to care, but I can really believe his word and let him go. The altered hunter hesitated. Tom and your other friend are just fine. Blake answered. At least they were when I last saw them. Gary let out a sigh of relief, although he wasn't sure who those other guys were. However, he had one surefire way to check where Tom was. At the moment, he was unable to see any of his markings, so he needed to make sure and immediately opened up the system screen. 10/120 energy. You are unable to sustain your werewolf form. While your energy is extremely low, emergency/passive healing function is unavailable. 20/100 HP. His stats were the lowest Gary had ever seen them before, but he found it interesting that the reason for him reverting to a human seemed to have been him running out of energy. If that was the case, then he might have just found a way to avoid turning during the next full moon. Of course, he would have to find a different way to deal with his bloodlust, and it would mean his fighting capabilities would be severely limited. Mark 2/5. 2 out of 5. That means Tom and Gil are both still alive. I didn't kill anyone, but why the hell am I here then? And how did I run into Blake? Now that Gary realized that his best friend was at least still alive, and he had managed to get through a turning, he looked towards Blake. Hey, come on, Blake. I know we're not the closest of people, but you have to understand. I'm not an altered, or at least not a regular one. So can you please let me go if I promise not to tell anyone? I mean, we're teammates, right? You remember me, and you did good together on the field today. The naked teenager was slowly stepping back at this point, trying to figure out where to run, or even what direction to run. It was then Blake put the short sword away as well and lifted up both hands. Gary, I'm not going to hurt you. I owe you for helping me out. It's just my family dash. A loud howl interrupted him, and they both looked into the direction of where it had come from. Blake couldn't explain anymore, for he knew this wasn't neither the time nor place for the two of them to talk. Gary, I don't have time to explain, but you have to get out of here. The high schooler was inclined to agree, but he didn't know where to go. Heck, he still wasn't sure where exactly he was. Looking around, Blake realized the other's problem. It doesn't matter, just run away from the noise. If the others find you, they won't let you live. Blake pointed in the opposite direction of where the wolf cry had come from. Gary started running, picking up the leaf. Hey, Gary said, turning around. I won't forget this, Blake. Your secret's safe with me. Squeezing his hand tightly, Blake held his head down in disappointment. Not only had he failed in killing an altered, he had even gone so far as to actively help it escape, missing his chance of getting closer to obtaining his first star and becoming an official hunter. If this ever got out, the fight in the forest was continuing between Frank and the altered hunter. It seemed both of them had underestimated their opponent. After the black-furred wolf had been hit by the strange feathers, it didn't make it easy for Sadie to use them again. The beast was now making sure to take cover by running between the trees, making it hard for her to hit him. Still, once in a while an attack would land, but it didn't seem to matter much because the werewolf would just pull the feathers out, its body healing the damage. That thing's healing speed is seriously annoying. Arg, why do we have to be near a forest? Even if I fly up, I can't use my full strength attacks. Sadie's was frustrated with the situation and soon felt the werewolf pounce on top of her. The White Rose agent covered her body, wrapping herself in wings. The two claws were surprisingly able to grip onto them tightly, and she could feel slight pain scrunching up her face. Her wings were harder than normal steel, and it had been a while since she had felt pain like this. The woman started to flap them, hoping that the beast would let go, but it already dug its claws into her brown wing, blood dripping from it. "Frank, a little help would be nice," Sadie shouted. She didn't feel like she was in trouble, but she knew that with her partner's help it would be far easier to deal with this strange altered. "I'm not having it so easy myself, you know," Frank shouted back. He had already chosen to place his wings back into his body. During the fight, he had been hit by the seared sword a few times, and he still felt the pain. The weapon was a high-class one. Right now, Frank was using his hands, which looked like talons. Some of his fingers almost looked like they were glued together with a single large thick nail at the end. He and the large altered hunter exchanged several clashes as Frank moved out of the way. Yet he was the one forced to block more than he had the chance to attack, but at least his claws were able to take the heat coming from the weapon. "You're quite skilled," Frank praised the other with a smile. "What are you, a 3-star hunter? That's how you guys rank yourselves, right? What is someone like you doing in a place like Slough?" However, the other didn't bother to waste time talking. He merely struck the White Rose agent with the sword, knocking one of the clawed hands away, and barged into the altered, his shoulder pushing him down slightly. He was then ready to attack with his sword again, before he had no choice but to jump back. 3 feathers could be seen on the ground, where he had been only a second ago. "You were meant to be helping me, not the other way round," Sadie complained, her legs now transformed as well, giving her the look of a bird-type altered. Underneath her clawed leg, the black werewolf was struggling to get out. Both of its arms were locked in place by her feet. "You altered can't even see the foolishness that has been brought on due to your existence. We both know that this beast isn't the exception, but the rule. Can you imagine the future if this spreads?" The altered hunter shouted. "If it wasn't for us, then those kids would have died today." The next second, Sadie felt a large pain coming from her foot as she realized that the werewolf had chosen to use his jaws to take a large bite. It had twisted its head, showing it was far more flexible than she had imagined, and with its large snout and powerful jaws, its teeth had pierced her foot. On reflex, she had opened it up, allowing the beast to get free at the moment. It let out a howl before deciding to run off into a different direction in the woods. It was at a great speed and had nearly gone out of their line of sight. "Look at your incompetence. Because of your meddling, you let it get away, and now it will just continue to rampage," the altered hunter shouted. At the same time, turning away from Frank, he ran in the opposite direction of the werewolf. "Who do we go after?" Frank asked. "Get the damn wolf man," Sadie shouted. "At least the altered hunter won't harm the public. That thing was like a wild beast." Eventually, running the way that Blake had pointed to, Gary found himself on the open road. He decided to run alongside it, hoping to find his way somewhere, but he was too embarrassed to let anyone see him as he was. As such, he chose not to run in the middle of the road and closer to the edge of the forest. While doing so, he couldn't get the crazy thoughts and events from today so far out of his head. "What do I do now? I only have 10 energy, and with the full moon out, it won't last me long," Gary asked himself, as if hoping his ever-silent werewolf system would choose now to provide some guidance. Of course, he wasn't surprised when it didn't. "I don't even know what time it is. How long until the full moon is over? Do I have to wait until the sun is up, or until a full day has passed?" That howl from earlier must have been Billy. He's probably going through the same thing as me, but if he meets me now and I'm in this state, he'll finish me off in seconds. At the same time, if I eat something, if I recover my energy, will I automatically turn back into a werewolf? Can I even risk it? Blake didn't seem to be the only one out there. There's a chance I won't remember anything and it will happen again. Gary continued along the road, and he was thinking more and more about what happened, and eventually he was getting snippets of his memory, of him fighting against a black-furred werewolf, and how he hadn't exactly done well. It was then that a little squirrel appeared at the edge of the forest. His stomach growled in response. One squirrel surely won't hurt. Maybe getting some energy back will allow me to think more clearly. Gary tried to convince himself as the saliva dripped down his mouth. He started chasing after the critter, even as he ran out onto the road. Seconds later, and a bright light could be seen from the corner of his eye. Gary turned around to see how far it was, and could see it was soon upon him. He was ready to jump into the forest, but his legs weren't working as he wanted, still too weak. Luckily, inches before it reached him, the car had come to a screeching halt. "Do you have a death wish, kid?" An annoyed voice came from inside the vehicle, slamming the car door open. Someone had gotten out, but the light was shining too bright for him to make out who it was. Why are you naked? What's with all those scratches? Just what the hell happened to you?" The person asked, the anger in his voice replaced with worry. Seeing the stranger leave his car, the first thing on Gary's mind was to turn and run away. "No, get away from me. It's dangerous to stay near me. If I'm next to anyone, there's a chance that I could. The teenage boy's mind was spinning as he took a careful step back, heading towards the forest. "Hey, stop. Where do you think you're going, kid? You can't stay out like that." The stranger shouted and was quickly by Gary's side. It was at that moment that his energy bar dropped even lower. 8/120 energy. The high schooler almost fell to the ground out of exhaustion, yet the stranger managed to catch him, easily carrying him to his car, where he placed him down in the back seat. Gary's eyes were closed, and he had fallen into a light slumber. The stranger continued to drive his car along the street, looking around frantically through the forest for something. Eventually, just when he had been about to head into the forest himself, his phone vibrated and he read the text he had just received. "Arg, so you're telling me I came all the way out here for no reason? No. I should just be happy that she's safe. Don't tell Dad. Does she really believe she can hide that fact from him?" The stranger muttered to himself, letting out a big sigh. His monologue seemed to awaken Gary a little bit. Opening his eyes, he found himself in the car with that stranger. He wasn't sure what to think about that. What were the chances that the guy had rescued him from the kindness of his heart? Unfortunately, there was little he could do about it. He still suffered from the same problems as before. Top of the list was the immense pain that originated from his stomach. It felt like someone was reaching and pulling his insides. However, for some reason, it didn't feel as bad as the last time he was low on energy. Gary theorized that it might just be because he now had experienced that painful transformation. Compared to that, this seemed like a walk in the park. "You're in luck, streaker kid. My plans just fell through. So now I can deal with you." The man addressed him, apparently aware that he was conscious again. "What happened to you? Why do you have no clothes on? And what are you doing so late?" Gary was trying to get a look at his savior, but with the other's face looking at the road ahead, it was hard to make out anything but his eyes from the rear-view mirror. Still, he did notice a few things. For one, the car they were in seemed to be an expensive, nice one. The quality of the seats, the space, and the brand on the wheel indicated that it was expensive, probably even an import. Then, there was the person himself. From his side, he could make out defined tricep muscles sticking out from a short-sleeved shirt. He wasn't exactly a large person, seemingly a few inches over Gary, but there was hardly any fat showing on his arm. He's even more ripped than that coach at the gym. Who is this guy? Gary wondered. "Come on, streaker boy, I need an answer. Right now, I'm still feeling generous, but if you don't want to spill the beans, I'll have to just drop you off at the police station." The stranger rushed him in an annoyed tone. Gary wasn't sure if he was the reason for his apparent bad mood, or if it had to do with the plans that had fallen through. "No, please, not the police." The teenager immediately pleaded. He knew that they had his blood in the record now. If he was taken in, they might be able to link him to all the other cases, something he needed to avoid at all costs. But what would he say? "This is just... I'm being bullied at school. They called me out here today before they took all my clothes. I can't fight back, they have connections." Gary lied, trying to cry to add to his story, though nothing but sobs came out. He considered this to be quite the feasible story. Of course, that didn't explain all the scratches all over his body. Gary just hoped that this sob story was enough for the stranger to not bother with those inconsistencies and ask him anything else. Fortunately for the teenager, the stranger did indeed feel bad to pry into things any further. My condolences. I guess you're lucky that I found you then. So where exactly did you intend to go before I picked you up? Shall I drop you off at your house? He asked Gary. With the way the high schooler was now, home was the last place he wanted to be. He honestly wanted nothing more but to be left alone until this torture was over. But he couldn't just ask the stranger to drop him off at the storage warehouse. Come to think of it, he dreaded the thought of what he had done to get out there in the first place. If I stay with him, there's a chance that I might attack him as well. Gary worried. No answer again, huh? Home trouble on top of school trouble? Look, I'll do you a favor, just this once. I'm staying at a hotel at the moment, and the room is way bigger than what a normal person needs. There are plenty of extra beds. I'll let you stay there for the night if you want. Then in the morning you can leave and do as you like, no questions asked, all right? The stranger offered. Yes, sir. Gary immediately agreed, a huge smile on his face. Perhaps there would be a way for him to leave once he was in the room or the stranger had gone to sleep. It was late after all. Sir, do I really look that old to you? The stranger complained. Damn it, why can't I help but be nice to people like him? Is it because it reminds me of my own situation? The stranger scratched his head. A short while later, the car stopped before a very nice-looking hotel that was located at the far end of Seepin. It was one of the slew's posher areas, but the good thing was that it wasn't too far away from the yellow stack. Now that they were out of the car, Gary had a better look at the guy in front of him, who was all of a sudden taking off his shirt, revealing his hard abs and everything underneath. The next second, he threw the shirt to the kid. Cover yourself with that, and stay behind me for now. The stranger ordered as they walked in the hotel. Gary did as he was told. Fortunately, the other was slightly larger than him, allowing him to stretch his shirt to hide certain exposed parts of his body. Now that he got a closer look at his Samaritan, he was wondering where he had seen this person before. The guy had a familiar face, but Gary just couldn't quite pinpoint where he had seen him before. Welcome back, Mr. Tiger. Would you like us to help with anything in your room? A female voice greeted him with respect. Holy sh*T, that's it. He's Jaden Tiger. What is one of the top altereds in our country? Was he doing in a sh*thole like slew? Gary, being the altered fighter fanatic that he was, instantly recognized him after hearing the last name. Any other day of the week, he might be fanboying over the chance to not only meet but stay with one of his idols, but now he was only worried. He was running from one tough situation to the next. Gary had to stop himself from hyperventilating due to excitement. His inner fanboy needed to be contained, yet he couldn't waste any more energy than he already had. Still, there was one silver lining to meeting Jaden. If Gary was to suddenly turn, he was convinced that the altered superstar could suppress him in a fight. Unfortunately, he didn't know what would happen after that point, so the high schooler made up his mind to never find out. The receptionist was baffled at the disheveled sight of Gary, but didn't say anything as the teenager followed the VVIP to the elevator. Jaden hadn't lied about his room being more than one person realistically needed. However, he had failed to mention one very important detail. He was staying in the penthouse at the top floor. The room alone was around 5 times the size of the apartment where Gary lived with his mother and sister. Through the glass windows, one would be able to see the entire town of Slough. This is exactly the type of life Gary had dreamt about when wishing to become an altered one day. Alas, he couldn't really enjoy it right now. Leaving behind a still baffled teenager, Jaden had gone to one of the connecting rooms and returned with a new shirt on. The altered superstar then threw over a pair of briefs, socks, trousers, as well as a jacket. This should let you go around town tomorrow without alarming the police. If you go down the hall, the showers are to the right. There's a toothbrush and everything in each room. It's late and I have an early start tomorrow. Just keep the clothes. There's no need to return them. Leave whenever you wish, though don't be surprised if I'm already gone by the time you wake up. Jaden told him, feel free to take a bite out of whatever's in the fridge. Turning around, the altered superstar was ready to close the door to his room, but stopped a few seconds later and opened it again. Look, I know times are tough in the world at the moment, but if you don't do something about it, then you might be stuck in this situation forever. The biggest influence on your life is you. Don't wait for something to happen. change, and make it happen. Jaden made a fist and swung it out. Gary understood the message that the other wanted him to stand up to his bullies. The high schooler smiled and nodded, thinking to himself that right now his problem wasn't fighting off bullies, it was trying to stop himself from killing and eating them. With the door closed, this was Gary's best chance to leave. Quickly putting on the provided clothes, he turned around and was about to head out, yet he suddenly stopped, considering his current situation. Right now, he was at a place where there was nobody else around. The only person that actually was around should be strong enough to contain him. And in case Billy actually tried to attack him again, that person could actually protect him from the other werewolf. His family still believed that he was at Tom's. The only thing worrying him was that he was unable to contact his best friend. After having saved the other's contact info on his phone, he had never bothered memorizing it. Unfortunately, his phone had been left at the storage warehouse. Not to mention, right now he was still a threat to him. There was an ornate clock above the TV that told Gary that it was 3 a.m. The sun would surely rise in about a couple more hours, so he decided to just wait it out. Sitting on the large sofa, the high schooler waited around, and eventually his system notified him. 4/120 energy. What happens when my energy hits 0? Will I even be able to move? Before Gary knew it, he found himself walking towards a fridge. Opening it, he was surprised to find it filled with all types of protein. Steaks, chicken, lamb among other animal meat, and from the looks of it, all high-quality products. Saliva immediately started to dribble out from his mouth. He was sure that just half a pound of any of that stuff would cost more than the rent for their small apartment. This is what you would expect from a top-class altered. Gary reached out ready to grab the food, yet stopped inches away. What if I can't control myself? No, I have to control myself. Gary picked up one of the raw steaks and slowly and carefully started to take a small bite out of it. It was taking all of his willpower to stop himself from just swallowing the whole thing in an instant. He had to grit his teeth and was using his other hands to hold himself back. +2 energy. I can do this. If I just eat a little at a time, stopping my energy from going too high should be okay. When it gets low, I'll just take another bite. Yeah, I just need to hold myself back. Gary thought. This way he continued battling with himself. More than once he had caught his body moving subconsciously. This was a mental type of torture that Gary had never experienced before, but after what felt like an eternity, Gary could finally see it. There, through the large glass window, he could see the sun was starting to rise, while the moon was starting to disappear. Sometime after that he received new notifications. You have successfully survived a full moon. The blessing of the moon has passed. 30 days until the next full moon. I did it. I did it. Gary jumped up, and the first thing he did was head straight for the fridge. He had held back to prevent his energy from recovering to the point he would be able to transform against, worried that this transformation might last until the moon came up again, or worse, a few days, but judging by the system, it seemed like that wasn't going to be the case. Early in the morning, Jaden's alarm woke him up at 6:30 a.m. As he went out, he was surprised to see that the kid he had picked up earlier was nowhere to be seen. He had expected to find him in one of the rooms, still sleeping soundly, but it seemed as if he might have disappeared after he had gone off to sleep. However, Jaden's conscience was appeased. He had done a good deed and could only wish the boy the best from now on. He headed to the fridge to look for a snack, though when he opened it, his jaw nearly dropped. What the hell? I just had it filled yesterday. Did that frigging kid eat all of it? No, that should be impossible. There was enough in there to last me a week. Did he steal some of it to try and make cash or something? Arg, that doesn't matter. What am I supposed to eat now? A little earlier, both White Rose agents had returned to the police station. They had done so to make a report on the case, and they wanted to confirm something. One of the feathers they had picked up still had the blood of the black werewolf that had managed to flee. Sadie wanted to make sure that the blood matched up with Billy. This was her hunch, and the others as well. After making a report, the two of them left the room, still furious about failing to arrest that dangerous altered. They had tried their best to find him from the air, but it was as if he had disappeared somewhere. They were still in the police station when another officer came up to them, delivering some good news. We found someone who claims to know Billy. The young officer Rue Game reported. Since Billy is a dropout, it was hard to find anyone who knew the guy, but unexpectedly, one of the suspects we brought in claimed he had seen him elsewhere. Apparently, the last time he saw him was at one of these underground fights. According to the guy, they happen quite often in this town. A smile appeared on Sadie's face hearing this news. An underground fighter? Huh? There should be a few people that would have seen him and know him then. Frank, looks like we'll be going undercover. Walking away, Frank noticed that Sadie was limping. She had been injured in her altered form and thought that a wound like that would have been healed by now. I hope that bite isn't infectious. Frank was worried. After replenishing his energy by plundering the fridge, Gary decided to take some of the food along with him. With no better alternatives, he placed them in the coat pockets of his new jacket. Right now, he was in a rush, and there was a reason why he had left early. He won't mind, right? I mean, the guy is an altered superstar. Someone as rich as him can easily just replace all that food, and it's not like I'll see him ever again. Damn, if I had been in my right mind, I could have asked him for a signature. I bet that would have sold for a decent sum. Currently, Gary was sprinting towards the yellow stack building. It was around 6 a.m. in the morning. He was hoping that he could grab his phone and check out what state he had left the room in. Perhaps it might give him an idea of what had happened after he had lost consciousness. We finally could see the yellow stack, though. There were the iconic white and black cars, which made him do a complete U-turn. Damn, the police are here. Did something happen? *T. Did I trigger some sort of alarm or something yesterday? What do I do now? Both of my phones were in there. And my clothes. I hope I don't get Tom in any kind of trouble. Gary started to panic. Well, I was naked, so maybe I ripped all of my clothes off. In the end, the high schooler couldn't risk staying there. All he could do was head to school without them. As for his school uniform, that had been left at school in the locker, since he left the rugby match yesterday in a hurry. He could only hope that after yesterday's match, Mr. Root wouldn't mind giving him some replacements. Running non-stop, Gary ended up using the charging heart skill 3 times. Once to get yellow stack and 2 more times to reach his school. This was because of how far he was away. Fortunately, with the extra food he had taken, his energy was almost full again. Although the moon seemed to still be full, he had lost his additional stats, though it was a small price to pay for no longer losing his energy as quickly. My stats are now lower, though, and I can really feel it on my body. I need to improve it. Entering school, there was next to no one due to how early it was. It had taken Gary an hour running, which was quite impressive considering the distance. If anyone saw his accomplishments, they would have tried to recruit him for the track team. The first thing Gary did was change into his school uniform from his locker. Anyone could see that his current clothes were too nice for someone like him. After that, all he could do was wait. Surprisingly, the first person who looked to have entered the classroom was none other than Tom. Yes, he's here. The one person I could have hoped for. I don't know why he's early, but thank my lucky stars he's here. Gary thought. He could see the marks again and knew they were getting closer, but he wasn't going to believe his eyes until he saw them. What was even stranger was the first thing Tom did. He immediately ran up to Gary, giving him a big hug. You're okay. I'm so happy. I was so worried. I thought that you might have been hurt or stuck in that form forever. Tom was crying, rubbing his head into Gary's shirt, covering it with tears and snot. He had no clue what had happened. If it was before, he would have pushed his best friend off, but after everything his friend had done to help him, it felt wrong of him to do that. Gary waited for Tom to finish letting his emotions out. Still sobbing, the other placed his backpack on the table and pulled out 2 phones as well as some ripped rugby clothing, handing them over to Gary. Wait, these are my things. How did you get them? Gary asked. Now looking at Tom, he noticed that his face looked incredibly tired. What exactly had happened to him? Gary thought. I went to Yellow Stack after leaving the police station. I thought that you wouldn't be there. Since you were dealing with other things, I didn't know how I could help you, but I wanted to make sure that the person I saw was you. When I entered the Yellow Stack, I could see that the steel door had been ripped to shreds. The chains were completely broken, and there was something on the floor. Anyway, I cleaned most of it up and grabbed things before calling the police myself, saying there was a break-in, so there shouldn't be a problem there. Wait, what? I understand some of what you were talking about, but the other things make no sense. How did you know where I was? or what I was doing? Gary asked. It was then that Tom went into the frightening details of last night. How he had planned to wait nearby. How they had seen someone killed in front of their eyes. But most importantly, that Gary in his werewolf form was the one that saved them. All of that happened, yet I wasn't conscious for any of it. At least it didn't sound like I attacked the other guys. But why did I save them? Well, clearly that other werewolf had to have been Billy. Gary thought. Thinking about things a bit more, Gary had some theories, and they were all related to his system. From what it had told him, he should have been hunting those marked by him with a force bond. Yet Gil didn't seem to have been there. Since that didn't happen, he could only imagine that his werewolf instincts had been trying to complete another quest of his, fighting the other Omega to see who would come out on top. Lastly, there was also the bond mark that he had with Tom. Maybe Gary had protected Tom because of his mark, or there was a part of him that was still in his werewolf form somewhere, telling his werewolf self to protect those close to him. The last one he thought was unlikely because Gary couldn't remember a thing. It was as if someone had taken over his body. It might be if I place more bond marks on people I really care for, like my mother and Amy. However, first I'll have to deal with a far bigger problem. Billy could still be alive, and if he comes out again... Anyway, thanks for helping us out, Gary. Now we have an entire month to solve this problem to prevent anything from going wrong next time. Just leave the whole mess about the container to me. I'll find a way to explain things to my parents somehow. Looks like it wasn't much use anyway. Tom chuckled. By the way, I was wondering, since when did you have 2 phones? Gary didn't want to have secrets from Tom, especially after everything he had done to help him. But at the same time, he didn't want to drag his best friend into an even deeper mess. It wasn't fair of him, and it was likely that it could endanger his life as well as that of his family, more so than he already had done. Oh, this thing? My regular phone has been playing up a bit recently. You know about our financial situation, so I've used some of that money I had earned from that part-time job to get myself that brick for emergencies. You know how those old phones can never die, and the battery lasts on them forever? Gary smiled, still feeling hurt inside. As for Tom, he didn't know how to feel. Gary had shared one of his biggest secrets with him, so why would he need to lie about a second phone? What about the police report? Did you say anything about me? Gary asked, changing the subject. Actually, I wanted to ask you about that. The whole thing was strange. You know that rich upperclassman Kai Hemper? He went ahead of all of us, but after he talked to them for a while, they all just let us go home. I thought he was just some rich kid, but just being rich shouldn't get you out of a situation like that. By the way, how do you know him? Scratching his head, Gary felt like he couldn't lie 2 times in a row. He was a bad liar in the first place, so he chose to stick to mostly the truth without revealing anything extra. He was actually the one who introduced me to that part-time job. Things were starting to add up to Tom, but he still didn't know why Kai, who couldn't have known Gary for too long, was so interested in him that his entire group, which seemed to include that sudden transfer Inu, had been willing to look for his best friend in the middle of the night. A short while later, and other students started to enter the classroom, unaware of the horrors Gary and Tom had lived through. Hey Gary, you did a great job in the first half of yesterday's rugby match. I never knew you were that strong. One of his classmates congratulated him. When Tom, how are you? I can't believe the referee didn't punish those bastards for clearly stepping onto your hand. Tom and Gary recognized him as one of the more popular kids of their year, meaning he was someone who would usually never associate with either one of them. A shame Gary didn't punch them out. Seriously, when you jumped those Eton High students, I was rooting for you. They would have deserved it. I'm still surprised you did that with their bad rep. I thought they were all going to jump you. Another one added. The compliments didn't seem to stop, and after the day that Gary had, it was a nice change of things. He thanked them all and just smiled back. The last ones to arrive were a teenage girl and boy, both resembling zombies. They were drained and dragging their feet along the floor. I guess both of them didn't get a good night's sleep then. Gary gulped, feeling responsible. Exian sat down in her seat and didn't look towards anyone with her head sunken in. Gary wanted to go talk to her, apologize for getting her into the mess, but it would have felt strange and given things away. As for Inu, when he tried to talk to him, the other didn't even let him utter a single word. You, I really don't want to talk to you. Inu sat down in his chair and placed his backpack in front of him, proceeding to use it as a makeshift pillow. Do you know what happened to us yesterday? Actually, scratch that. Do you know what happened to me? I almost got killed like 5 times, and it was all because we went searching for you. Then, I have this psycho here, shouting your name all the time, trying to talk to some possessed altered. Bad luck. That's all I have since I started following you. With that, Inu just lay there. The truth was that he knew it wasn't Gary's fault that this had happened, but he needed someone to blame all his frustrations on. Lessons went on as normal, but as was to be expected, Gary couldn't focus on the classes. Billy was the main worry he had in his head. Even his werewolf form couldn't beat the other werewolf. Gary had no idea how to beat the other, especially since Billy had already killed and consumed humans, making him even stronger. The longer he waited, the worse his chances of dealing with him became. Maybe the best option would be to get him before the full moon. Then I can worry about myself as well. But it means I have to be prepared to kill him. Gary thought. A little while later, he felt his phone vibrate, and it was coming from his secret phone. Tom, who had been keeping an eye on Gary, took note of this. When it was finally time for lunch, his best friend asked him if they could go and grab a bite to eat together. Sorry, I have to make a report to Mr. Root about the game. He said he wanted to talk to me about something. Gary lied again. Okay, I understand. I might just stay here and catch up on some sleep. Tom replied. Watching carefully, Tom soon saw that Inu also looked at his phone, one that looked eerily similar to the brick model his best friend had, and went off in the same direction as Gary. That phone and Kai. Something's up with all of them. I wonder if this has something to do with how Gary was making money. Gary, I just hope you're not getting yourself in another mess. Tom's guess was spot on. The high schooler had headed to the roof, where Kai and Marie were both already waiting for him. A little while later, Inu joined them as well. It looks like everyone is here for our meeting, Kai said after Inu closed the door behind him. We had quite an eventful evening yesterday, looking out for you, Gary. I'm sure your friend already caught you up on everything that happened. Anyway, regardless of this, tomorrow is the big day for you too. It's your first match, and it's also our first debut as a gang. The reason why I called you all here today was because I wanted for us all to come up with a name as members. This came as a surprise to Gary. He had seen Marie interact with Kai that one time he had followed after her, yet he had never thought that she would also be involved with this whole gang business. How about the Unbreakable Iron Group? Or, I know, the Black Flames, Inu suggested while pretending to wield the power of fire. It was when the group noticed that Inu had quite the childlike side to him, and that his naming sense was horrible, yet Gary didn't have any better suggestions himself, which was why he decided to keep quiet. After what happened yesterday, I actually felt inspired by those creatures. What do you all think about the Howlers? Kai suggested, looking at Gary in particular. I like it, Marie said, while Inu shivered a little bit thinking about the howls he had heard form the altered yesterday. However, he had to admit that it was a good name. A gang name should send fear into whoever heard their name, though usually their own members should be exempt. I think it's good as well, Gary answered, really not having any better ideas. After that, Kai reminded the two to keep out of trouble until their fight, before giving them the meeting place on the day of the match. He also advised them to stay inside as much as possible due to the recent events that happened. Since lunch was coming to an end, Gary was heading back to his classroom, and it was when going through the hallways he stopped dead in his tracks, and so did the other person opposite him. Blake. Damn it, I completely forgot about this. Despite surviving the full moon, the amount of things Gary had on his mind hadn't really reduced. For some reason, he had put this one in particular to the back of his mind. Perhaps because it had been the first thing he had been confronted with after reverting back. Or maybe it was because Blake being an altered hunter seemed as unbelievable as him being a werewolf. Man, what is it with this school? Does it have some special attraction to strange people? I'm seriously starting to worry about running into vampires, dragons, demons, or the like. Out of everyone, why did he have to be an altered hunter? Planning to avoid the confrontation, Gary decided to do the easiest thing. He lifted his hand to wave at the other, and then tried to promptly walk right past Blake. However, as he did, a shadow was cast in front of him. The high schooler quickly moved to the other side, yet the shadow copied him. It was clear that the young, altered hunter was blocking his way. Come on, You really want to do this in school of all places? I can't get into any more trouble. I just came back after being excluded for an entire week. Look, I'm pretending that I never saw you, that everything was just a bad dream yesterday. So why can't you do the same? Gary was screaming internally as he decided to go for a spin, trying to get past his schoolmate. Right now, Gary was imagining himself on the field with the rugby ball in his hands, and he was trying to get past one of the defenders. Unfortunately, Blake seemed to have predicted this and was already in the right position to catch him. *T. Couldn't things have gone my way for once? Blake placed his hand on Gary's shoulder quite confidently and leaned in so no one else would hear. Look, I'm not too eager to have that conversation either, but we really need to talk about yesterday. Don't worry, I'm not planning to do anything else to you. Let's just head to the bench outside near the art block. I believe it's in both our interests to decide what to do next. Blake whispered before he patted the other on the back and continued on his way. Well, a talk doesn't sound too bad, but I haven't even had time to think about what to say. Damn it, Blake is a nice guy, right? I mean, he let me go yesterday in the woods. Surely, he wouldn't lie to me to try and kill me now. We're in school with far too many potential witnesses. If he really wanted to, he could have approached me outside of school. Being relatively sure that it was safe, he decided to follow behind the other. Nobody found it too strange that they walked together. Although they hadn't won the match, everyone in school knew that Eaton High had beat up nearly all the regulars. Gary had only recently become one, and their teamwork had secured them a draw, making the two of them the superstars of the rugby club. Alas, Gary was being reminded just how popular Blake actually was. Everyone went out of their way to greet him. A few girls even stopped by to bring him gifts. The high schooler wasn't too sure, but he wouldn't be surprised if some of those cookies had been baked early in the morning just for Blake. On the other hand, only a few congratulated Gary here and there. It was obvious that he was treated mostly as an afterthought when they noticed that he had been behind the real rugby star. Damn it, would they all be thinking the same if they knew he was an altar hunter? This lifestyle, everything he's doing is fake. It was then that Gary realized the hypocrisy. Was what he was doing really any different? Altar hunters had a bad reputation. After all, becoming an altered was something that everyone aspired to be or wished for. They were superstars and instant celebrities. Yet one crazy group of people had chosen to kill them for no apparent reason. Or at least not a reason the general public could understand. If anyone did find out Blake was an altered hunter, he would probably be chased after for the rest of his life. Eventually, the two of them reached the bench, and he realized why Blake had picked this spot. There was no one else there, other than students far away in their classrooms practicing art instead of going outside to play. The two of them sat together for a while, neither one really sure how to start such a serious conversation. Should I go first? Is he waiting for me to say something? Or should I just wait? Just when Gary was about to speak, Blake started instead. My family, they have been altered hunters since seemingly forever. Altered have actually existed for much longer than you're led to believe. Just like us, they used to have a different name, but that's beside the point. It was only recently that altered started to become more public about their existence. I don't know how someone like you managed to become an altered. I actually chose to go to a no-name school in a Tier 3 town because I believed that it would allow me to separate my two lives. I never wanted to run into somebody I knew, but then I met you. It made sense, although Blake hid the fact that he was an altered hunter. In the end, he was still a teenager like Gary. Gary knew how hard it was to kill someone that you know, or someone you saw every day. The connection made it harder. Going to a no-name school, it should have been impossible for anyone to afford to become an altered, or have the potential to be selected as one, apart from Blake himself, of course. I'm guessing it started when you got better at rugby. I didn't think much of it at the time, and I thought that it was actually fun to just forget about everything and try to compete for a change. You helped me forget about what I was. Damn it, the more I listened to him, the more I realized the two of us are alike. That's why I started to enjoy rugby a lot as well. And then you saved me, which is why I decided to do that favor for you the other day. But at the same time, Gary, this is a warning. There aren't many altered in this town, which means that you will become one of our targets. How much do you know about altered hunters? Blake asked. Not much, just what is on the news. I had no idea that you used that strange armor of yours. Gary replied honestly. We altar hunters have ranks. Blake explained. These ranks are tattooed on their shoulders in the form of stars, and a lot of hunters are proud of this. The more stars, the stronger the altered hunter, and my father, who lives here with me in this town, is a 3-star hunter. A 3-star hunter? So what are you, and how do hunters even get these stars? Gary asked. It was the first question that the other had asked that made Blake pause for a while. I don't have any stars on my shoulder yet. An altered hunter will only get a star if he manages to successfully kill 5 altered. Right now, I'm still an apprentice to my father, and you were actually meant to be my very first kill. Now Gary understood why Blake's father was so dangerous. If he was a 3-star altered hunter, it meant that the other had already killed altered in the double digits, beings that were superhuman with all sorts of different forms. He was experienced beyond belief. I guess I was lucky I ran into you then and not him. Gary chuckled nervously. That's my point, and it's why I came to talk with you. Since I'm in my apprenticeship phase, my father will accompany me until I earn my first star. We never expected to find 2 of you in Slough, making us split up. However, if I was you, I wouldn't go out anymore. The next time I'm with my father and we spot you again, I won't be able to stop him. If anything, I will have to help him. Blake admitted, stood up, and got ready to head back to class. Wait, Blake. The other altered. Did your father manage to catch him? Do you know where he is? Gary asked. Blake turned around. His face didn't look pleased, which was a rare sight. This whole time while they were walking through the hallway, Gary had only seen a smile on the other's face, though he could tell that it was just for show. No, we didn't. Some White Rose agent got in his way, and according to him, he used the chance to escape one that other altered fled. There's nothing in the news, so I guess they were unable to find that one afterwards. Blake shrugged his shoulders. I'm sorry, I thought that the 2 of us might become good friends, but because of what I am and what you are, it might be best if we kept our distance outside of rugby. Although Gary didn't know Blake too well, for some reason, the words of the other stung. Maybe it was because he learned that the 2 of them were close, or maybe it was something else. But if Gary did meet Blake again, he didn't want to be his enemy. That was for sure. Shut up, Gary shouted. Don't go deciding that crap on your own. I'll kick your arse at rugby, and I'll kick your arse in fighting as well. But that's it. We can still talk in school. We can still laugh and have fun. You're still you, and I'm still me. Nothing has changed. Who cares about who or what we are outside of school? Turning back around, Blake gave the other high schooler a sad smile, yet didn't say anything. And that is why you're dangerous, Gary, because of your beliefs. I hope I won't ever have to pick between you or my father. Back in Gary's classroom, there was one student who hadn't moved at all from her seat, and that was Xian. She had kept her head down, which was still pounding from the lack of sleep. After everything she had experienced that night, the most frightening thing for her was waiting for her when she got home, because she had been forced to confront her father. As the mayor, it was impossible for her to keep something of that magnitude hidden from him, especially since the bodyguard assigned to her had been killed in active duty, leaving her no other choice but to tell him the truth. Xian had confessed to everything, though she claimed that she had wanted to celebrate with some of her friends because of the rugby match, before they had been attacked by an altered. The news report later revealed this fact, and the police report made it so her father believed her. Unlike what she had expected, the mayor had hugged her tightly and had just been thankful that it appeared to have been a random attack rather than someone trying to go after her. Of course, that hadn't been the end of it. This morning, after having thought things over during the night, he had told Xian about the changes that would happen to avoid such a situation. The increase of bodyguards was the least of her troubles. The worst part is, I can't even complain about him changing the rules of this deal. Still, he could at least have allowed me to go home by myself. How am I supposed to make any friends if I have to drive to and from school in a car? I guess the only freedom I have left is in school. Xian sulked as she could hear the sound of giggling from behind. The annoying high-pitched laugh had become an annoyance, and it was giving the high school girl a bigger headache than usual. How great would school be if Tiffany wasn't around? She has yet to actually do anything since our talk, but I can't shake this feeling that she is plotting something big. However, Right now, Exine was simply too tired to care whatever that banshee was preparing. Her last thought before she fell asleep was where Gary had actually disappeared to yesterday. When returning to class, Gary spent some time talking with Tom. During the breaks, they were trying to come up with ways of preventing what happened the first time, and on top of that, his best friend was actually trying to figure out ways to deal with the other Omega Wolf. The only weakness we know of is chocolate. Even that is something we can't be too sure of. In the worst-case scenario, it might actually be something completely unique to you. But even in the best-case scenario, it's not like we can get rid of him by throwing a chocolate cake in his face. Say, do you think if I smother myself in chocolate that it might act as a repellent, so he won't eat me? Tom questioned him. That is the strangest suggestion I have ever heard, Gary commented, as he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Do you want me to wear gauntlets or something and smear that in that stuff to deal poison damage to him or something? If it works, why not? Although it might be a bad idea for you to be the one to use them. Double-edged sword and everything. Who cares if it sounds stupid? You have to remember that our freaking lives are on the line here. And for some reason, that werewolf seemed to have taken a particular liking to Inu. Tom whispered. Over to their right, Inu was snoring lightly. Gary had a feeling that he already knew why the other werewolf was after him. I don't think something like chocolate is going to do much. At best, it might make him vomit Inu out if he tries to eat him, but it won't really stop him from killing him. Eating human flesh seems to empower a werewolf. I can only assume it will either be an increase in stats or more stat points to assign, or maybe a direct increase like it was for hunting down a target. As long as one can actually live like that, the pros seem to outweigh the cons. It really seems to be the easiest and fastest way to get a power boost. Later in the afternoon, it was time for club classes again, and when Gary and Blake met, they looked at each other before giving the other a nod. It seemed that their little talk had improved the relationship between the two of them. Instead of their regular training, Mr. Root talked about the game, telling everyone what went well and what went wrong, but in the end, how it was ultimately not their fault that they didn't win. Eaton High had used an even dirtier method than usual, so not losing was already a huge achievement. Most surprisingly, he actually thanked all the non-regular players for taking up their role, calling them out by name instead of just referring to them as the benchwarmers. All of the regular players gave them a big round of applause, and Gary was starting to think that Mr. Root actually was one of the better adults he had seen in his life. Practice continued on as normal after that, but there was one thing that the high schooler had noticed a certain student hadn't arrived who had done every time since. His mark is too faint, so he can't be in school. Just what is he up to? He seemed fine yesterday. Maybe he isn't over Barry's death yet. Gary wondered. Apparently, he wasn't the only one who had noticed his disappearance. He could overhear some of the students talk to each other. Hey, have you noticed that Gil isn't here? A student asked. I heard that he went to Headmistress Young this morning to drop out. Seriously? Are you sure he didn't just plan to transfer to another school? You know, he and Barry were inseparable. Maybe he just wants to be elsewhere to not be reminded of his childhood friend. I thought the same, but someone told me that Gil had actually joined a gang. I doubt he has a need to go to school if one of the big gangs accepts him. The students carried on talking about Gil, and Gary could only think of one gang that he probably had joined. The Gray Color Gang, which was related to the Gray Elephants. Tomorrow I have that fight with Inu, so we were meant to do some training today, but if we run into Billy again, there isn't much chance I can beat him. If I meet Gil again, I wonder if that quest will activate again. I wouldn't mind farming him for some EXP. At that moment, he crossed eyes with Blake, remembering that there were others out there. It should be okay. As long as I don't transform, I'm just a normal high schooler. I can't avoid taking risks. If I just sit around, my friends and family could all be in danger. I need to get stronger. Thinking about his last remaining hunting target, Gary thought back to the last time he had seen Gil together with the Color Gang, how he had almost killed a defenseless old man. That had just been a test after joining the gang. Now that he had proven that he didn't shy away from dirty work, he might actually be given worse things to do, and thinking along these thoughts. Billy has eaten multiple people already. That's why he was so much stronger than me. If I were to do the same, I might gain the power to rival him. I can't bring myself to end innocent lives like Billy does, and Barry was just an accident. However, There's some people that don't deserve to live in this world anymore. And if I have to kill, if I have to get stronger to protect the ones I care about, then I would rather them die over my friends. Thinking about this, without realizing it, saliva was dripping out from Gary's mouth. After training was over, Inu actually came over to Gary to tell him that there would be no practice today. Although Inu had just joined the school, he had been advised to join the rugby club by someone in particular, and it had been no surprise to him when he had arrived the other day that he could see Gary there. Kai was clearly a person that just loved to pull strings and act as the puppet master behind everything. As for Inu's reasons for canceling practice, for one, the high schooler was still mentally tired from what had occurred yesterday. He didn't want to stay out, and his other reason was that he considered it important to rest before an important match, like the one they would have tomorrow. Too much training was just as bad as no training, and he thought that whoever they would face in their match tomorrow, he was confident the two of them could deal with it. Before leaving, he informed Gary that he would update him on anything to do with the Billy front, but since he would be staying at home today, it was unlikely anything would occur. It seemed that Inu hadn't put together that Billy and the werewolf were the same person, but Gary couldn't blame him. Were it not for his werewolf system, even he would find it impossible. The fact that training was canceled was great news for the high schooler, who quickly hit the gym on his way back. There was no need for him to consume extra meat since he had already had his fill thanks to the generous donation of a certain altered superstar. EXP 105/628. I know that my stats have gone up, but training is starting to seem pointless with how long it takes me to increase any of my stats naturally. With a measly 5 EXP per session, it will take me ages to level up even once. If I want to get stronger, I need a faster way to earn EXP, and for that I'm going to have to take risks. By now, the color gang should have calmed down, so perhaps I can incite another turf war. I can't just sit around and allow Billy to get stronger on his own. But first, I need to do something else. Arriving home, Gary pushed the door open and was positively surprised to see his mother in her work clothes. She was wearing a plain blue top with a badge that had her name along the top. He figured that today might have been one of her very rare free days, or perhaps her shift had been moved to later. "What are you doing here, Mom? Did they call you for a late shift again?" Gary asked as he popped his head into his room, hoping to find his sister, yet she was nowhere to be found either. "Yeah, they have me on the late shift again," his mother replied as she was texting on her phone. The middle-aged woman had a smile on her face as she did this as well, which worried Gary. If this was the case, she was either talking to her friends or it was with another man, and Gary dreaded the thought of meeting another person from SLU. And he didn't like the idea of another person being introduced into their family. He was the one that would help their family out of their situation, not a stranger who didn't know the struggles they had gone through. His mother worked as a cashier at a 24-hour supermarket. They would call her in for extra work at all sorts of times, and she would always accept. Because they knew she always said yes, they always asked her first. For Gary, though he hated it, the later the shift, the more likely there was for trouble to be caused. The only saving grace was that the supermarket was under the underdog's territory in SLU, so no one touched it. If they did, they would be facing the biggest gang in SLU. Still, that didn't stop some gangs or strays from trying to do things once in a while. "If you're looking for Amy, she's staying over at Stacy's tonight," his mother shouted, noticing that her son was looking in every room and even knocked on the toilet. "She went out. Well, as long as she stays indoors, I guess they're safe, but I really wanted to do something today." The reason Gary was a little bummed was because he had been planning to create a bond mark with her. Although it was unlikely that Billy would go after his sister, it wasn't impossible, and it was mostly a question of when the underdogs might unearth his real identity and the people around him. After hearing what Tom said about him protecting him as a full werewolf, Gary was confident he wouldn't harm them. "Well, I guess I will just have to leave it for next time then," Gary thought. There was still one other person he could mark, though. Going up to his mother, he pulled a chair and sat down opposite her. She intricately turned her phone over, which made Gary even more suspicious that she was talking to a guy on the phone. However, seeing this gave him an idea. "Mom, I don't mind you talking to other people, but I get kind of jealous sometimes. I know looking after me and Amy can be hard sometimes. It's just that I get worried that sometimes you might leave us." Gary had his face down and was putting on an Oscar-worthy performance. His mother immediately raised her arms and gave him a big hug. "Gary, you and Amy are the most important people in my life, and that won't change. You even saved up all that money for me. I hate to admit it, but you can't even imagine how much it has helped our situation. I wouldn't give you two up for anything in the world. I will never leave you." "You promise?" Gary asked, holding out his pinky. "I promise," his mother replied as her own pinky touched her son's. And at that moment, a notification from the system had appeared. "A spoken deal has been made. Would you like to mark Maya Dem?" "Yes." 3/5 marks have been assigned. Gary was pleased that the system was pulling through for him for once. But that was when he received another message he never expected. "You have successfully bonded with another person. The system has decided to reward you for your hard work. Keep going. At the end of each day, you will receive 10 EXP for every active bond mark. Protect those promises and the people you trust. Loyalty is the #1 priority for every upright werewolf." Huh. Is the system sick today, or is this supposed to be a type of reward for surviving the full moon? Either way, it's finally actually giving me some good things for once. With this, I can easily get 30 EXP every day with the daily quests. That's not all. I still have 2 free marks. Hey, system, what do I have to do to increase the number of marks? Just when Gary had thought the system might have turned over a new leaf, the system returned to being as unresponsive as ever. Aside from leveling up, the high schooler came to terms that he would have to hope that he might to either luckily unlock a way to increase that number, or the system might decide to drop him some tips. Nevertheless, Gary needed to be careful about the promises he made. According to his system, should the other party end up breaking that, then his bond mark would automatically turn into a broken mark, making those people into hunting targets. While that might not be bad in his daily lives, it would lead to disastrous consequences during a full moon. It was something he wanted to avoid at all costs. Fortunately, when seeing his mother on the phone, he had come up with what he deemed to be a perfect plan. He had made his mother promise him that she would never leave him. Gary was completely convinced that she would never do such a thing. If their mother had wanted to, she could have left the 2 teenagers ages ago, making this an unbreakable bond mark. "Thanks, Mom." Gary smiled, elated that he would be able to protect Mother whenever she would be in danger now. Like Tom, the mark that appeared was green, although the smell coming from them was different. It looked like he would have to try his best to use his nose rather than his eyes more. Now I just need to think of a promise that I'll be able to keep with Amy. It would be best if it could be something as foolproof as Mom's. Right now, nothing comes to mind, at least nothing that she is guaranteed to keep. A little while later, his mother received a call, and it was time for her to go to work. Gary knew her shifts were long ones, so when leaving the house late today, there was no need for him to worry about sneaking out. The high schooler waited a little while until the sun set, yet he noticed something odd about Gil's marking. For some odd reason, it was becoming clearer, leading him to believe that he was coming in his direction. What was he doing? The guys at school said that he dropped out to join a gang, but the gray color gang's territory isn't anywhere near here. Could he have some sort of personal business in this area? When it was finally dark out, Gary decided to head out. He wore his trusted hood covering up his head, and he had made sure to wear something black. At first glance, he appeared like just another member of the black color gang. Curious about Gil's mark that had become slightly paler, but seemed to be still around the area, Gary followed it. However, even before he could see the dropout, he could clearly make out the sound of conflict from a mile away. Sneaking through some trees and past the roads, he found the source of it. Underneath a bridge, there were members of the red color gang and members of the gray color gang fighting against members from the black color gang. Initially, Gary believed this to be a 3-way fight, but after watching for a while, it became clear that the other two had banded together to attack the black color gang. What's going on? Did the gray elephants take over the gang behind the red color gang? No. Could it be that the two of them entered an alliance? *T. If that's really the case, this could endanger everyone in Slough. It was then that Gary realized that he could hear the sound of even more fighting going on. This wasn't just a small scuffle between two gangs. Right now, he could tell that there was a war going on. The other two color gangs had clearly invaded the black color gang's areas. Crap, why did it have to happen today, of all the days? If they're pushing the black color gang this much, then it will force the underdogs to act. Gary was starting to panic, looking around to check if he could still escape if things went south. However, before he left, another thought crossed his mind. Wait, there's chaos, too much for the police to handle. In the past situations like these, they would leave it so the gangs take each other out, only coming at the end to arrest the losing side. If that's the case, can't I take advantage of all of this? As long as I avoid the members of the real gangs and just go after the color gangs, this might be my one chance to earn big time. Just as he had expected, things were about to change. A distance away, walking confidently through the streets, was Kirk. Instead of his iconic red suit that he wore whenever he appeared on TV, right now he had a black suit on with a yellow spotted tie, representing the underdog's cheetah squad. Following him were 5 menacing-looking men. They had received reports from the black color gang members who had called for backup, and they had arrived just outside what looked like a pub. Didn't your superiors warn you to only go so far? We don't usually involve ourselves with the affairs of color gangs, but you guys have pushed it too far this time. You do know that this pub belongs to the underdogs, right? Kirk asked with a smile. There were several injured black color gang members rolling on the ground in front of him, while members of the gray and red gang seemed to have suffered minimal casualties. There were still more than a dozen of them on each side, with a total around 30. Immediately, the one closest to Kirk ran forward with his baseball bat and swung it with all his strength over his head. Not wasting any time, Kirk took a stance and threw out his fist. The second the bat and his fist collided, the piece of wood snapped in half. What the? The gray color gang member looked at his bat in disbelief. Is he a robot or something? You idiot, that's Kirk Summerfield. He's an altered who recently won that rookie tournament. One of the red color gang members shouted. Kirk was quite a well-known figure in the public, yet not many knew that he was also a member of the underdogs. The gangs were quick to run away. Alas, they didn't get far. Kirk had transformed the bottom part of his legs to run past them all. He would have been even faster if he hadn't taken off his expensive shoes beforehand, to block off the juvenile's path of escape. Since you guys are already here, I'll have you answer a few questions. You didn't think I would let you go this easily after what you did, right? First, who are you working for? Second, why do your bosses believe that they could just barge into our area and take over? And lastly, have you seen a kid about this height, around 16 years old with green hair? Amy Dem and Stacy Turnhell had been inseparable ever since kindergarten. They had known each other since seemingly forever, and both girls had been lucky enough to be able to always go to the same school. Unlike Gary, his sister had always received good grades, and had even passed the 11+. It was a test one did when reaching the age of 11 to determine whether or not the student could enter a grammar school. Those grammar schools were state-funded and were exclusive for the best of the best, those that the state believed had the most potential. This came as a blessing to the Dem household, as it meant everything would be paid for. Their mother was very happy when she found out that they would not have to worry about school supplies or lunch or any other things Amy might need for any club she might have chosen to join. Gary hadn't even come close to passing his test, but Amy and Stacy had both managed to place relatively high, allowing them both to choose which school to attend. Although not the most prestigious one, Amy had chosen to go to SLU's only all-girls grammar school, so her family wouldn't have to worry about her. Now that she was in high school, she and Stacy were the only ones who had passed the test from her old school, making the two friends naturally grow closer to each other. When Amy had come over, Stacy had told her that they would be doing something very special today. After putting on the black dresses the latter had prepared for the two of them, both went out of the house. I really don't feel comfortable in this. Are you sure this makes me look slimmer? Amy complained as she walked. The dress felt far too tight to her skin, something she just wasn't used to. Originally, Stacy had also prepared some high heels, but this was as far as Amy would go. She had tried to slip them on and felt like her toes were constantly being squeezed to death. She didn't understand why other girls put themselves through such torture. Come on, it's just for today. Stacy encouraged her, pulling out some red lipstick and a mirror as she masterfully applied a thick coat on her lips, making them seem bigger than they already were. Stacy was an unnatural blonde-haired girl. In the past, she used to be quite shy, but ever since she had entered high school, she had begun to become far more outgoing. Amy didn't know what had caused that seemingly sudden change. Her best guess was that Stacy might have just wanted to create a completely new image in a new school. At least when it was just the two of them alone, Stacy still acted like always, so Amy hadn't addressed the change. For all she knew, people changed as they got older. Her brother and his green hair were a perfect example of that. However, lately Stacy had become far more interested in fashion, makeup and lipstick, and it showed. She had applied it well onto her face, as if she had spent hours upon hours watching video tutorials to learn it. It was scary how Amy could see her best friend turn a few years older with a couple of steps. Both of them were merely 15 years old. Amy was just one younger than her brother, and usually parents wouldn't let girls out so young, but for some reason, Stacy's parents didn't seem to care as long as her grades weren't affected. As for Amy's mother, with how busy she was with work, it had been ages since she had last seen Stacy, probably still thinking of her as the shy little mouse she used to be. "Here, let me help you out a bit," Stacy offered as she came over. With surprising expertise, she applied some of her makeup and lipstick onto her best friend. At first, Amy had wanted to reject, but she found it hard to say no when looking at her happy friend. She didn't want to ruin the mood between the two of them. "Done. You look amazing. You really should start wearing this stuff more. Just say the word. I got Mom to buy me new ones after I aced that last test, so I'll be happy to share my old ones. It really brings out your looks." Stacy held out the mirror for her best friend, and Amy barely recognized herself. The one who looked back at her appeared to be a young and very pretty university student. It was definitely something she could get used to, though she would still rather wait a few years for such a change to occur naturally. The two girls hailed a taxi, something Amy was thankful for. Walking the streets, especially at this late hour and dressed up like they were, seemed to be a guaranteed recipe for trouble. "Why do we have to dress up anyway? I thought we were just going to karaoke," Amy asked. "Yeah, but we're meeting someone today." "Shoot, did I forget to tell you?" "Oh, I'm so sorry. I was so excited that I thought I told you already. My boyfriend's going to be there, and he also invited some of his friends. Who knows? Maybe one of them has green hair like your brother." Stacy teased her best friend. Now, Amy wasn't feeling so great, and it wasn't just because of what Stacy insinuated. She had thought it was just going to be the two of them, like it always had. Stacy had mentioned her boyfriend a few times recently, but Amy had believed it had just been something she had made up to look better compared to the girls of their class. At their age, their only chance of meeting boys was through school, yet an all-girls school that was impossible. Most of their male teachers were up there in their years, but even the youngest one was easily more than double their age. She hadn't seen Stacy hang out with anyone around school, so just where had she met him? "I mean, at least we'll be in a public place, so I guess it's going to be okay," Amy mumbled, still a little worried. Eventually, the taxi pulled up on the main high street of Slough. It looked different at night with all the lights, but it was considered a relatively safe area. The general public believed it was due to the mayor, who had promised that the town center was the one place that he would guarantee all of their safety. Another reason why Amy thought it was okay to be here, until she got out of the taxi with Stacy. Immediately, Stacy ran up and hugged someone that was more than one head taller than her. The boy wore a gray beanie with his hair sticking through slightly. He also had both his ears pierced and his bottom lip. He wasn't alone either. He had brought along two friends, one of which was currently smoking. Seeing this sight, alarm bells were screaming in Amy's head, but the main reason was due to Stacy's boyfriend clearly being older than them. The three of them had to be either in their last year of high school, repeaters, or most likely university students, unless they work somewhere else, of course. "I've been so looking forward to this. I'm glad that we finally get to meet," Stacy greeted him. Hearing this, Amy just wanted to slap her forehead. The two of them hadn't even met. "Stacy, please don't tell me you actually met him over Binder or some other app." "Oh, who am I kidding, given the age difference? Where else could they have met?" I bet she lied about her actual age, and that's why she was so adamant to put on that makeup. Amy believed to have seen through the situation. The next second, she saw the two of them holding hands and Stacy turn around. "Come on, Amy. You're a great singer. You're always hogging the mic when it's just the two of us. So let's show them what we got." Stacy invited her best friend. Every bone in the high school girl's body was advising her not to go inside. Yet Amy couldn't leave Stacy alone with those strangers. If she were to suddenly make up some excuse, like her stomach hurt, then who knows what might happen to her best friend. 3 young adults with one naive little girl. What if they do something to her? No, I can't leave her alone. She must have known that it would be dangerous alone. I'll just have to try to convince her to go home early. Who knows? Maybe it's all just in my head. There's always the chance that they might be decent guys, but if not, I'll just have to tell them that I got a sudden stomach ache or something. She shouldn't mind too much if this is their first meeting. Amy thought about what to do in this situation. The police would be too slow to respond. They had too much to deal with in SLU. Who knows how fast they would react, even if it became an emergency. Just in case of anything, she typed in a text, noting her current location. She didn't send it out to anyone yet, but it would only require a click to send it to the one person she trusted most. An opportunity was exactly what Gary needed. Billy was far stronger than him, and if Gary wasn't willing to eat people like he was, then there was almost no way for him to catch up, so much so that he had even gone through his head a number of times just exactly what he might do to Gil. However, the system was a strange thing, and noticing that a gang war had arrived, the system had answered him once more. New quest received. When 2 fight, the third one takes the prize. As an outsider, you have been chucked into the midst of a gang war. Are you following trouble, or is trouble following you? Either way, show them the strength of an Omega Wolf that follows no one. Quest reward: 50 EXP per defeated person. The system was still telling him to get his hands dirty, but not too dirty. Seeing the fight between the engagements in the bridge continue out in front of him, along with the system screen, he couldn't help himself. Gil, you'll just have to wait a little longer. Entering the karaoke club, the boys rented out the room and were even nice enough to pay for it on their own. At first, everything seemed fine, apart from the fact that Amy found herself on the couch surrounded by 2 guys she had never seen before. Meanwhile, Stacy was busy brushing her body against her boyfriend, who had introduced himself as Hawk, of all things. Amy was convinced that that couldn't be his real name. No parent would ever subject their kid to that. Amy was sipping on her juice, left with the other 2 boys. The fellow to her right was slightly larger in his bottom half, making him look like a pear, whose name was apparently Pyrrhus. The one on her left was the complete contrast to his friend, seemingly nothing but bones, who had told her to call him Ben. Given her outer appearance, she was easily able to remember their names as well. The room was quite large, with a bench around the back and 2 microphones. At the moment, Stacy and Hawk were doing a duet, and the 2 other boys were slowly creeping their way over to Amy. "So, Amy, I guess you don't have a boyfriend since you're here on your own tonight?" Ben asked carefully. "Unfortunately, I haven't found the right one yet. It would have to be someone my brother approves of." Amy replied truthfully. Just like Gary, she also had a hard time lying to others, but she hoped mentioning him might perhaps make them back off somehow. "A brother," Pierre murmured. "Who does he is he still in school? Could he be someone we know, perhaps?" Pierre seemed to have wanted to ask something else at first, but he had quickly corrected. Amy had no clue why, though, as he had almost instantly replied with Westbridge. The next moment, she regretted it. Now that she thought about it, it would have been far better to have named a university to make it seem that Gary was older. Unfortunately, her answers seemed to have calmed the 2 teenagers, and they continued their questioning, but thankfully it looked like Stacy and Hawk had just ended their duet. "Finally, me next." Amy quickly jumped up from her seat and almost snatched the microphone out of Stacy's hand, as she chose a longer song and began to sing straight away. This was her only saving grace from the other 2. It felt like forever, but according to the clock, we've only been here for half an hour. I haven't even had time to speak to Stacy. Why didn't she pick up on me telling her that I needed to go to the bathroom? Amy was trying to figure out a better excuse, but by the time the song had ended, she hadn't come up with anything better and decided to sing the next one as well. When singing, she was in her element. It really was something she truly enjoyed doing, and running up, she closed her eyes as she hit a high note. Yet suddenly, there was no background music, and the large screen that would show the lyrics had turned off. "Hey everyone, so I think that's enough singing for now. Let's do something more fun. Hawk suggested. It was clear he was the one who had pulled the plug, and he swiftly pulled out a deck of cards which he laid down on the table. Looking towards her friend, Amy didn't even try to hide her annoyed face. The guy could have at least waited for her to finish her song before doing this, and Stacy could only form the word sorry on her lips, her eyes pleading to not make a big deal out of this. Sitting at the table, Hawk dealt out cards while Bones lit up another cigarette. This only further annoyed Amy, as they were all in the same room together. While smoking was allowed, she was of the opinion that he could have at least asked them before forcing them to enjoy his secondhand smoke. A short while after, a waiter entered the room and placed some more drinks on the table, which Ben seemed to have ordered when he had left the room previously. Looking at the foam, it was clear to the high school girls that they had just been served alcohol. They can order alcohol, then just how old are these guys? They have to be at least over 18. This is worse than I thought. Come on, Stacy. Even you should see that it's going to end badly. Amy cried internally, but her best friend was too busy flirting with Hawk. The guys began to drink without any hesitation, and Stacy joined them after her boyfriend talked her into it. Amy had a bottle in front of her, which she would just pick up occasionally and pretend to drink from. The smell alone was strong enough to keep her from trying it, and she was definitely not going to start drinking around strangers who she knew for less than an hour. After a while of playing cards, though, Amy was slowly lowering her guard. The guys had talked a bit about themselves, and had even managed to make him giggle from telling some jokes. Maybe I was just being too cautious, judging them based on their appearance too quickly. Living in our area for too long does that. Alas, Amy soon discovered that she had been right all along. As the round finished, and it was her turn to shuffle cards, Hawk stopped her and brought out a small bag with white powder. He started to use the cards to spread it out into 5 lines. Is this? Yes. Hawk answered with a proud tone. My brother is a high-ranking member in the Gray Elephants. Girls like you might not know them, but they are one of the gangs in SLU who have a say in how things are run. It's easy for me to get my hands on this type of stuff thanks to him. Come on, try it out. It's hard to explain just how good this feels. A few seconds later, all the boys had snorted their lines before they shook their heads for a few seconds. While Stacy had played along with the alcohol, hard drugs were something crossing even her line. Amy could see that this was also far beyond what she had been expecting. Thank you very much, but I think I shouldn't. I haven't been feeling well for a while. Maybe it's the alcohol. I think I need to lie down. Stacy, I'm staying at yours tonight, right? Maybe we should go. Amy insisted. I think you're right. Stacy instantly agreed, happy that she had dragged Amy along. However, as she tried to stand up, Hawk grabbed her by the wrist. Hey, you can't just leave. We still have so much time left. We paid for this room, paid for your drinks, and we haven't even done anything yet. Don't you think we deserve something in return? Hawk smiled mischievously. Seeing this, Amy immediately stood up and was planning to grab her best friend and make a run for it, but Pierre grabbed the high school girl's hand. He had a surprisingly tight grip around it. What are you doing? You're hurting my wrist. Let go. Amy shouted. I'll scream if you don't let you now. It was then that Ben had gone over and plugged the karaoke machine back in, before turning it on at full volume. Now, even if they did scream, nobody would hear them, or just think it was the music. We're in real trouble. Using her free hand, Amy placed it into her pocket and hit the send button. She wasn't sure if he could help, but they just needed someone who could help them out of this situation. Gary knew that the smart thing would be to keep on watching, waiting for both sides to weaken each other further, so he could snoop in and finish off the losing side. This way he wouldn't use a lot of energy, while still being able to get some EXP. However, he had decided to take some risks. Given the content of the quest, it seemed wiser to get involved in the fight before any surprising backup could arrive. He didn't know how long this gang war would last, since it was just a matter of time that the underdogs would send out their muscle. If he waited too long, the gang war might escalate to the point it would be too dangerous for him to get involved. At the moment, Gary was dressed in all black, so the only color gang he could help out and pretend to be a part of was the black color gang. It's 2 gangs against 1, so I have to join in while the black color gang still has some members standing. Gary thought. He ran across the top of the bridge and waited for a few moments. Looking below, the group were fighting at an underpass, and the black color gang members were slowly being pushed back, making their way out from the tunnel. He could see 3 members still standing. They were hunched up together, obviously hurt, but still fighting. It was clear that at this point they were basically running on fumes. Unfortunately, running away wasn't an option. Turning their back on the other color gangs would just seal their fate. They wouldn't get far before the other members caught up to them. Damn, I was hoping they would be in a better fighting condition so they could help me grab some last hits. I know my skills have improved, but without the boost from the moon, I'm not too sure I can handle all of the others on my own. In his hesitation, he thought back to his fight with Billy, at least what he could remember of it. Fighting a bunch of humans seemed a lot easier. Just then, he could see multiple people run from under the bridge. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They just keep coming, and there could be more. Gary counted. It wouldn't stop him. He saw the black color gang members had engaged with the others, and this was his chance. 2 more people ran from the bridge, and with no fear, Gary leaped from above. He was on the path to land directly onto them, and that's exactly what he did. Stretching out his legs, he made sure his foot hit the back of their heads, causing them to fall over and their heads to slam in the concrete ground. Your opponents, too, have been knocked out. 100 EXP gained. EXP 205/628. Such a move would knock anyone out. Yet the high schooler was also a little afraid that he might have hurt them too much. Just as he considered checking their condition, someone swung a bike chain from behind and struck him across the face. Fortunately, it only cut his cheek around his mouth. 4 HP. There's another one of those black color F** curs over here. A young man dressed in red called, who had hit him. That bastard knocked out Stan and Kenny. Get him! Behind him, Gary could see 7 more people. But on top of that, he noticed something else that his nose was able to catch on. There were color gang members that had been left on the side of the road, some of them bleeding, while others looked to be in much more critical condition. If this really was a gang war, then ambulances would be hard to come by today. The police must have already been told about what was happening right now, and they would tell ambulances not to enter the area until things had calmed down. It was very possible that a lot of people would die tonight. I almost felt sorry for the 2 that I hurt, but you're all just the same. Gary thought to himself as the red color gang member swung the bike chain again. Skill activated charging heart. All stats have temporarily been doubled. -10 energy. At the right moment, Gary used his bare hands to grab onto the chain, then the next second he pulled on it. The one holding it hadn't even recovered from the shock that someone had managed to grab his makeshift weapon. Yet the next moment, his face connected with the black color gang member's elbow. As his head flung back, he let go of the chain. Gary knew he wasn't done yet, because the system had yet to notify him. Lifting his leg, the high schooler quickly spun and hit the red color gang member right on the neck, sending him to the ground. Your opponent has been knocked out. 50 EXP gained. EXP 255/628. Hey, who is that guy? One of the black color gang members asked his companion. They were still in the middle of their fight, but had noticed what had happened. No idea. I can only see the back of his hood, but with him here, maybe we can get out of this thing. Another answered, as he barely avoided the strike of the gray color gang member in front of him. After taking on that one member and seeing the others back off, Gary noticed something. He had been around gangs long enough, but the one he had dealt with appeared to have had some authority amongst them, most likely one of the better fighters out of their group. Since Gary had dealt with him so effortlessly, as well as his imposing entrance, they were afraid of him. Noticing this, he quickly changed his plans. I'm sorry, Gary said, having overheard the earlier conversation. I'm on no one's side. I'll be taking everyone out. Gary had been forced to use another charging heart later on, but with his power boost, he had managed to defeat them all. Inu's lesson had proven quite effective, allowing him to have an easier time defeating them. It had been easy to tell which one had trained or not, and thankfully all of them had already been tired after fighting beforehand. It had become clear to Gary that they all were mostly relying on their makeshift weapon, making them lack actual skills. After the first 3, he had knocked out all remaining 10, granting him an additional 500 EXP, enough to level up. I've finally gained another stat point. But still no new skill. I don't get it. Do I need to fulfill some special conditions or something? Or are you just a miser, system? I know that you at least have that hardened, well, skill saved up. Oh well, I will just have to keep grinding today. It's not every day that I get to beat the sh*t out of gang members without having to fear any consequences, so I should make the best out of it. Gary thought as he checked his status. Name, Gary Dem. Level 6. EXP 1, 27/765. Health, 68 out of 100. Energy, 92/120. I got hit way more in that last fight than I needed to. I guess some of my energy will be used up to heal my wounds while I'm not fighting. Shoot, I should have grabbed something to replenish it. If only I had more money. Looks like I might have to grab a bite on the way. Gary's enhanced hearing allowed him to hear the sounds of fighting in other areas. With how faint it was, he would probably have to run over to get there in time to actually have anyone left to fight, though. However, before he could even decide between searching for some food and heading toward the sounds, he felt his phone vibrate. He instinctively grabbed his secret phone. At this time, it should be either Kai or Inu who might want something from him. But to his confusion, the screen only showed him what time it was. There was no new message or missed call. It took the high schooler a moment to put it back into his pocket and grab his regular one. Just as Gary had suspected, he had received a message, but the most surprising thing was the sender. It was from his sister of all people. The police station was currently busier than ever, receiving nonstop calls from residents living in a certain part of Slough. All of them reported that they could hear fights, moans and groans, with some even testifying to have seen teenagers in red and gray beat up others dressed in black on the street. It didn't take long for the police to figure out what was going on, but just like Gary had predicted, due to the scale of the gang war, they couldn't respond immediately. The police force simply lacked the numbers to contain large-scale fighting like this. Chief of Police Anton Milston was in charge of the people's safety. Right now, he was sitting behind his desk, grabbing his head in frustration as he didn't know how to deal with this situation. Those damn White Rose agents. They're only interested in their stupid altered. Yet when we have a situation like this on our hands, the only course of action they're willing to take is to let things play out. Anton complained, though more to himself than to Rue, who was with him in the room. The rookie was nervously standing in the office waiting for his superior to give out orders. How was it possible for such a situation to break out without any prior signs? All our informants have been telling us was that the black color gang had been getting into more fights with the red color gang. But what does that have to do with the gray color gang? We know the black color gang is controlled by the underdogs and that the gray elephants are behind the gray color gang. We still have no clue who is behind the red color gang. Could it be that the gray elephants found out before us and took over? Anton spoke his thoughts out loud. It was one of his tics, and his subordinates had gotten used to it. They knew why he did so, in case anyone wanted to chime in on his thoughts. I don't think it has always been the case, sir. Rue spoke up. I looked into them, just like you've asked, but while not as numerous, there have also been many incidents between the red and gray color gangs, the last one dating only a few days ago. Learning this fact, Anton thought it could be one of two things. Either the gray elephants had approached the red color gang's backers to pull off this stunt to massively piss off the underdogs, perhaps some retaliation for something yet to be determined, or there was an even bigger figure behind it all. Someone who the gray elephants had no choice but to listen to. I just hope that none of those kings are involved in any of this. If they are, then this town will become a battlefield before it's all over. Anton mumbled before he stood up from his seat, ready to move out. We might not have enough hands to stop the color gangs from fighting, but we can at least prevent them from going after the other areas. I want every available officer placing barriers around Chavley. Call on those who might have taken a day off, and maybe even those who have just retired for the day. Make sure that no one enters or gets out for the time being. As soon as things settle down, that's when we will make our move, understand? Although Rue did understand, he had a concerned look on his face, and he could see it. Sir, does that mean we won't be acting out on the reports? What about the public places being attacked? Or the request for ambulances? This is a color gang war we're talking about, not the big gangs. What Rue meant by this was the difference in crimes. The bigger gangs, such as the underdogs and gray elephants, actually acted more like businesses. Of course, they've both laundered their illegally obtained money through their businesses, But even if the police knew that, it was impossible to catch them without evidence. At some point, a tacit agreement seemed to have occurred between the two parties. The gangs tended to stay out of the way of the public, not causing them any trouble, and the police didn't try to make life hard for them. However, while the big gangs seemed harmless at first glance, the same could not be said about the color gangs. Those were filled with young, frustrated teens and tweens that found it hard to get jobs, hoping to prove themselves out on the streets to rise in the ranks and get accepted into one of the bigger gangs. In the past, when situations like this occurred, the color gangs tended to get a bit wild, drunk on power, and would start to rob stores, plunder, and steal from the civilians. They all felt like they were unstoppable in those moments. I'm afraid that will have to be a sacrifice we will have to make. Trying to save a few will just risk us getting dragged into this mess and the color gangs spreading throughout the whole town. Anton slammed the table. He didn't like that this was the only choice they had, but with their limited power, what else could they do? Rue, believe me, I wish it was different, but I have a feeling that this fight will push the underdogs to act. If that's the case, this little war will be over far quicker than you might imagine. Let's just hope they will be the only ones to come out. Otherwise, I'm not sure what it would mean for Slew. Just as Anton had predicted, after the red and gray color gangs managed to overwhelm the black color gang on multiple fronts, they were starting to become a little wild. One group in particular was getting particularly crazy. They were full of mostly new recruits, one of them being none other than Gil. The dropout had just picked up a trash can from the side of the street, which he promptly dunked on a black color gang member's head before kicking him on the ground. The others were impressed by the new member's ruthlessness, who seemed to be even better at fighting than before. I was a little worried about him after what happened last time, but it seems like it just gave him an extra push. The group leader thought. There were around 30-ish gray color gang members causing rampage. They were attacking everyone on sight, no longer differentiating between black color gang members and regular civilians, and that's when their group came across a certain 24-hour supermarket. Its lights were still on, yet it appeared they were in the middle of closing the shutters down for safety. Seeing this, Gil picked up another large trash can and ran towards the supermarket. That guy, he looked at me like I was a loser. I'll show you who the real loser is, Gil thought, reaching the man and swinging the trash can. It reached the man before he could completely close the shutters. Gil didn't stop there, as he lifted the can and began whacking the man again and again. Hey everyone, the store's up for grabs, another member shouted, and soon the other members of the gray color gang started to storm the supermarket store. Once Gil was done, he entered as well, leaving behind a no longer moving man lying in a red puddle of blood. Inside the supermarket, seeing what was going on, the employees were going crazy and immediately ran toward the supply room to the back. 5 of them had saved themselves, yet the last one, a frightened large woman, had slammed the door shut behind her, locking out 3 of her colleagues. They banged on the door again and again. Let us in. Please, they'll kill us if you don't. One of the women begged from the other side. We can't. They'll get us too. Just hide for now. The large woman cried out, holding on to the door. At the same time, the pet food aisle was emptier compared to the rest of the store. When stealing things pet food was somewhere on the bottom of the priority list for looters. Here, there were 2 female employees hiding out. One looked to be a middle-aged woman, while the other looked to be a young university student. The university student had her head tucked into the middle-aged stomach. Both were on the floor shaking, doing their best to be as quiet as possible. Calm down. It's okay. We will be okay. The police will arrive and get us out of this place. The older woman whispered to the other to calm her down. Still, no matter what she did, the student was still scared, and honestly, she was as well. Based on the situation as an adult, and imagining the girl as her own kid, she knew she had to put on a brave act. They might come, but they'll be a bit slow. A male's voice could be heard from above the 2. The middle-aged woman looked up at the person who spoke to them. A teenage boy who couldn't have been much older than her son stood there, covered in blood. He walked forward towards the 2 females. What a couple of pretty-looking girls. I should have joined a gang a long time ago. Out here, there are no rules. Gil spoke, liking his lips, as he considered whether to start with the university student or the older woman. whose tag read Maya. Pierre still hadn't let go of Amy's hand, so the high school girl let out a scream. Unfortunately, the loud music from the karaoke was indeed overbearing, drowning out her loud, shrieking cry. Even if there had been no music, Amy doubted anyone would come to help them, and not just because the room seemed to be pretty soundproof. This is a public karaoke place, right? There has to be a camera in here or something. The high schooler desperately looked around, and that's when she noticed that the camera in the corner of the room had at some point been turned around to face the wall. These guys, I should have known when they brought out the drugs. They must be in cahoots with someone from this place, and seem to have planned this from the very beginning. Oh, Stacy, what kind of mess did you get us into? No matter how much Amy thought about it, she didn't see any way out of here. It seemed impossible for two normal high school girls to overpower three bigger and older young men. Even now, as she tried to wiggle her arm free, she could feel Pierre just tightening his grip to the point she couldn't move it at all. Hey, Hawk shouted from the other side of the room. He then held up a phone, yet it didn't look like the one he had been using. Instead, it was one with a pink case. Now that she took a closer look, she recognized it as Stacy's. Her best friend's makeup was completely ruined by now. Tears and snot were all over her face. Stacy felt the worst out of everyone there. Not only had her internet boyfriend turn out to be a complete and total douche, but he had hurt not only her, but also Amy. She had never wanted to drag her best friend into any of this. I'm sorry, Stacy cried. I'm sorry, Amy. I'm so sorry. She continued to sob, yet Hawk seemed to have had it with her. At this point, he swung his hand, slapping her right across the face. It was clear that he hadn't held back either, as Stacy's face had gone bright red in a moment, leaving an imprint of the guy's hand. Stacy fell into a silence after this, her eyes wide open. She had gone into shock and didn't know quite what to do anymore. The high schooler looked at Amy, unsure what to do, but the next moment, her hair got pulled up, making her scream out in pain once more. Shut the F***CK up, will you? Hawk shouted at her as he pulled her up to his eye level before letting go of her. You too. Make sure to confiscate the other slut's phone. We don't want them to call the police on us. Following the order, Pierre used one hand to pull Amy's arm out of her pocket, restraining her while Ben came over, searching for the phone in her pocket. As he did that, he made sure to press his body quite a bit up against hers. This is so disgusting. What are they going to do with us? Amy thought, as hundreds of thoughts were running through her head. She already had a very bad idea about what they were going to do to the two of them. The real question was, what would the three do to them to make sure the girls wouldn't go to the police right after? She had heard cases of where they would be filmed, and the videos would be shared around if they were to tell anyone. **T. The bitch seems to have already messaged someone. Some guy called Gary. Ben reported after checking the messages. Although the phone was locked, they could see the preview of the reply from Gary, claiming he would be there in a second. Who did you message? Hawk asked. Tell me. Amy didn't answer him, trying to think of the best response in this situation. Hawk took that as a sign of deficiency, so he decided to make her talk. Instead of going after Amy, he grabbed Stacy by the back of her head, pulling at her hair, causing her to scream out once again. Oh, it hurts. Please stop, it hurts. The high schooler cried out. Did you not hear me? I told you to shut up. Hawk shouted as he pushed her head, banging it across onto the table. Everyone in the room could hear the teenager's skull hit the table. Her teeth had pierced her lips, causing a small amount of blood to fill the table. Pierre and Ben looked at each other. Despite being high, even they began to question their actions. Hawk, however, didn't stop there and continued to apply force, swinging Stacy's face against the table. I can do this all day. I won't stop until you tell us who that guy is. Hawk looked at Amy, hitting Stacy once more to stress his point. Don't. Gary's my brother. Amy confessed straight away. The two boys, Pierre and Ben, laughed after hearing this. They had already asked her about him, so they knew he was just some random nobody going to no-name high school. Even if he were to come, what was he going to do? Hawk, giving the thumbs up, it looked like they had permission to do as they wished. Feel free, guys, Hawk said, as he started to unbuckle his belt, and the two boys next to Amy were about to do the same. No, they can't. I have to get out of here. I have to save myself. Amy thought, Her arms were still being held up by Pierre. She had considered kicking him between his legs, but the high school girl was afraid he might see it coming, so she used the only body part she could at the moment. Opening her mouth, she bit down hard on Pierre's arm. He immediately let go, and without looking back, Amy ran for the door. Alas, before she could get far away enough, Ben, his trousers already dropped, grabbed the back of her hair, pulling her back in. "It looks like you need to feel some pain as well," Ben shouted as he pushed her up against the table. Her thighs hit the edge, but next she felt a large force hit the back of her head, and she soon could see it being banged against the table. She could feel a shooting pain in her face, not quite knowing what happened, her eyesight slightly blurred, but desperate to get out of the situation. She kicked behind her, hoping to hit the shin of Ben. "Just stop trying to resist," Ben shouted, and now he held her head as well. He banged it against the table, not once but twice, and continued to, but Amy didn't give up struggling, still kicking and moving every part of her body. By the second, her eyesight was getting more blurry, and she was wondering if she was about to pass out or not. "Amy, a voice shouted. The three guys could see a green-haired boy suddenly enter the room. "Gary, but why? Are you alone?" was Amy's thought before completely passing out. Ben lifted her face up, and Gary could see his sister's face banged up, bloody and bruised. His younger sister, his family that he had promised to protect. The others laughed, seeing the young teenager enter the room and walk towards them on his own. They could see he was far smaller than them, making them even less afraid of him. Even if he could fight a bit, there were three of them and just one of him. Not saying anything, Gary made a fist and swung it towards Ben's face. It was too fast for Ben to react and hit him right across the face, causing his teeth to fall out and for him to let go. In that second, he grabbed Amy before she could fall to the ground, and now he could see Amy in his hands. His whole body was shaking. Gary's body was shaking from head to toe. "What the F***CK did you do to my sister?" Gary shouted. "You are heavily enraged. You have exceeded 200 BPM. Partial transformation has begun." His eyes narrowed. His teeth and fingernails started to sharpen. The rage had taken over Gary completely. When reading his sister's message on his phone, Gary's heart went into a panic. Amy wasn't the type to joke around with him, nor was she someone who would usually ask him for help. Since she did, it could only mean that the situation was seriously bad. Gary's heart started to beat faster to the point that there was no need for him to use the charging heart skill. Looking at the status, his heart rate was currently at 169 BPM, making him twice as fast and twice as powerful for no energy spent. The high schooler didn't think about anything else and just ran towards the Kobe karaoke club the two girls were supposed to be at. He no longer cared about the gang war happening at the moment, nor did he care about gaining EXP. His only wish was to get there in time to prevent anything bad happening to his family. "Please be safe, Amy. Please be safe, Amy." Gary kept repeating it like a prayer in his head as he ran and ran, completely ignoring all the fights happening around him. Eventually, he found himself in front of the right place on the main high street. The high schooler quickly ran up the stairs until he was in the reception area. It was dark, and he could hear the loud thumping of music behind several of the doors. Originally, he had planned to use his enhanced senses to find out where Amy was. Unfortunately, his enhanced senses proved to be a detriment for once. It took him a few moments to get used to the, to him, incredibly loud noise. However, in the end, he pushed through because of his sister. Behind the reception, there was a young man with sunglasses standing behind the desk. Gary thought it was a little weird since they were indoors, it was dark, and it was already late, yet he would be lying if he claimed that it didn't fit the image of this place. "Hey," Gary called out. "I'm looking for two girls who came in here earlier today, accompanied by three guys. One girl's an unnaturally blonde girl. The other has brown hair and looks a bit like me." He pulled his hood down, revealing his face. Usually, he wouldn't be revealing his face, but right now he wasn't thinking things through, too preoccupied with getting to Amy. "Sorry, kid, I can't just tell you what room people are in. Customer privacy and all, I don't even know who you are," the man replied, shrugging his shoulders. Were it not for the severeness of the situation, Gary might have tried again by politely asking the man, or he might have started arguing with him to convince the other how important the matter was. Right now, though, he didn't have any time whatsoever. He noticed that there was a tie around the man's neck, another item that the man appeared to be wearing as a fashion statement. Dangling in front of Gary's face, it became the perfect thing to grab. When the high schooler pulled on the front, the neck tightened and the man was pulled down so fast that his sunglasses fell off as he reached Gary's height. "Listen here, one of them is my sister, and she asked me for help." Gary practically growled at him. "Now tell me where they are." "You think threat dash." Gary didn't let him finish, just pulled harder on the tie, to the point it was starting to suffocate the man. Seeing how determined the green-haired teenager in front of him was, he quickly pointed in one direction of the hallway. Gary immediately let go and followed to where the man had pointed. Gary didn't like what he had just done. It was something more along the lines of a real gangster, using violence to get his way, but this was an emergency case, he told himself. Rushing, Gary looked through these small windows in each of the doors that would show who was inside of the room. He looked through each one, until one of them caught his attention, not because he could see his sister, but he could make out the smell of blood. Opening the door, he witnessed a strange sight. One guy had his trousers down and was holding a girl by her head. "Emmy!" Gary shouted as he recognized her. That's when the three guys noticed him entering the room. "What the F***CK did you do to my sister?" he shouted as he decided to act, punching Ben in the face, sending him off to the side as he carefully picked up his sister, holding her in his arms. "You are heavily enraged. You have exceeded 200 BPM. Partial transformation has begun. All stats increased to 125%. His eyes narrowed. His teeth and fingernails started to sharpen. The rage had taken over Gary completely. The teenager's body had changed slightly, yet the high schooler had yet to notice since the change wasn't on the level as it had been during the full moon. "Stacy," Gary shouted, as he could see that she was still conscious. "I want you and Amy to get out of here. Grab a taxi and get to the hospital." Although Stacy had just seen Gary send one of the boys across the rooms, she still felt he was outnumbered. She was afraid to move as Hawk was directly next to her and Ben was already recovering, holding the side of his face. Pierre was still pissed from having been bitten by Amy, so he ran over to where Gary was. Yet before he could do anything, the other had already kicked him in the stomach, sending him flying back. His back had hit the table, and he was hit so hard that his body flipped down on top of it, knocking all of the bottles onto the floor. He quickly placed Amy onto the side of the bench, then jumped on the table himself, stepping on top of Pierre, ignoring him. He walked across the table, stepping on Pierre's body along the way, not caring about him one bit. Hawk, seeing that the situation was getting out of hand, let go of Stacy and pulled out a pocket knife. He attempted to stab Gary, who approached him, but the green-haired high schooler dropped down from the table and just opened up his fist, grabbing onto the other's hand, allowing the knife to pierce through the palm of his hand. Gary was bleeding, yet the knife was stuck. Looking into his eyes, Hawk was seriously scared. No sane person would ever try and stop a knife by sacrificing their own body. Clenching his fist, Gary started to crush the other's hand, who immediately started to scream in pain. He could feel his fingers breaking. "Get going, Stacy," Gary shouted once more. The high school girl didn't need to be told again, as she went over to where Amy was and grabbed her best friend. Luckily, Amy had somewhat woken up, yet her vision was still blurry. "Come on, Amy, let's leave it to your brother. I think he's got this." Stacy spoke as the two of them fumbled out of the room. "Do you have any idea who my brother is?" "You screwed up big time, Gary," Hawk shouted, yet his voice contained a hint of hesitation. "My family are part of the Gray Elephants, and we will make sure to hunt you and your sister down. I will return this favor 10 times worse." It was then that the sound of the door was heard opening behind them again, and the man who had been at the reception came in. "Hawk, do you need help, bro?" the man asked. Gary had initially felt bad about his earlier treatment, but now it looked as if he had been in on this all along. Hearing these words, hearing what Hawk had said, and remembering this sister's face, the bruising marks, she was hardly recognizable to him. That girl, she is the best sister in the whole goddamn world. She never complains, and she works hard. She's only F asterisk King, 15 years old. What the hell were you planning to do to her? All of you are guilty, Gary shouted as he looked at Hawk. Bloodlust has been detected. Force bond has been activated. 4/5 marks have been assigned. Skill activated claw drain. Dash 15 energy. His hand transformed slightly, and Gary swiped with it along Hawk's chest, causing a deep scar and blood to gush out everywhere. As the blood fell on his clawed hands, he could feel a strange, refreshing energy inside him. The effects of the claw drain were working. The next second, the receptionist, Ben, and Pierre charged forward. As for the events that followed, it all became a blur for Gary. A blur of red. When it was over, he stood there in the center of the room, covered in blood, glad that the music from the karaoke machine had been so loud. The entire room was now covered in blood, with the lights from the TV screen flashing once in a while, revealing the state of the room. None of the four men would ever move again. I've gone and done it now. Only this time it was no accident.